Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Red Dot Forum Camera Talk. I am David Farkas. I'm joined, as always, with Josh Lehrer.
Hey, everybody.
And, of course, we've got Jose Rivero producing the show.
Hello, hello.
And our own Kirsten Vignes in the chat to help you guys out. So, I see everyone's joining in. Again, you might have noticed we swapped places again. We kept it. We had overwhelming feedback. Everyone really liked the live view macro setup that we did. So we did a little rearranging in the studio. A lot of rearranging, actually.
You did all of that. I was not involved.
I did a little monkeying in the studio.
Yeah.
And did a setup that we can actually test the topic today.
Yes.
And hopefully give us a little more insight into the relative performance metrics. And also, people have been asking Josh, we always talk about how Josh does all this in-depth testing and everything before the show. Well, everyone wants to see it, and guess what?
You ask and you shall receive, and probably be disappointed when you see how
It might be disappointing.
how haphazard my testing is. But it's fine. I think for me, it's always about the relative comparison, not about the actual thing that I'm creating, which is what, when we do these kinds of shows, we want to share with you guys about how do all these things compare. We're looking at 50, 60 years of Leica history.
Quite a lot.
David, what are we... Well, you were going to ask me.
I was going to ask you.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Josh,
Yes.
what are we talking about in today's episode?
Today's episode is all about the Leica Noctilux. Not a lens, but many lenses sharing a name and a heritage, starting in 1966 and working its way all the way until today. So David and I are going to be talking about, well, we said last week the macro episode wasn't an anthology episode. This is an anthology episode.
A little bit.
Because we're going to cover all the versions of the Leica Noctilux from past to present. We've got a nice array here on the table to show you.
An assortment.
An assortment.
A smorgasbord.
Yeah, a lot of lenses. I've been shooting a lot of Noctiluxes today. My entire day has been Noctilux photography, and I think for us, this is a topic we're both really excited about because it's really one of the things that makes Leica so special.
It's very unique, for sure.
Yeah, there's nothing, when you look at the lineage and the heritage and the functionality, frankly, behind these lenses, it's really pretty fun to dive into the history and see what these lenses can do, especially on a modern camera. Because I don't think Leica could have ever imagined in the 60s what we'd be shooting.
No, I don't think so.
Well, David, let me ask you this before we start getting into the specifics and the history. When you think about the Leica Noctilux in terms of what does it mean, what does it stand for, what comes to mind?
Well, the word Noctilux is sort of night, right? So Leica has always branded the Noctilux, or the range of Noctiluxes, as king of the night. As we call unavailable light photography, right? So
like that one,
and I would say, this is part of that mythology. The Noctilux is so deeply ingrained in Leica mythos, right? That it's kind of that old adage is that the Noctilux is more sensitive to light than the human eye. That it actually sees and can gather more light than we're capable of seeing with the naked eye. And I think that's kind of where they're coming from here. Leica actually, to kind of jumpstart a little bit on the history, is they actually were involved supplying very high performance, very low light lenses for military usage. With, like, for instance, the U.S. Navy used lenses that were as fast as f/0.85. Of course, they were, this big.
Enormous, yeah.
They were not meant to be carried around on a camera. They were actually, hard mounted for very specialized use. And I think somewhere along the way, let's say maybe in the 1960s, imagine that.
Yeah.
They got this idea of, what if we incorporate that into our lens lineup for M cameras? And that is, I guess,
where the history starts.
Where it starts.
We have been trying for weeks and weeks to get an original 1.2 Noctilux to show. And we got pretty close, and we had some willing friends. Thank you, Hari, if you're watching. But alas, that is the one that we do not have to show you in person. They are extremely rare and extremely valuable and extremely delicate. And while we do enjoy showing you guys everything, there's at a certain point, it wouldn't be practical or necessarily fair to the owner of a lens like that to be shipping it back and forth excessively. So we're grateful for those who tried to help us get one. And maybe one day we'll have one here and we can do a whole episode just about it. I don't know. At the very least, a freestanding video for the channel. So,
well, we have at least, we can bring up the slide, and what we're going to do is play pretend.
Yeah, I agree. We should start with that.
We should play pretend.
Back and forth about this, but
because Leica did a reissue of that lens, sort of, as an homage. They did a limited edition of 100 pieces in silver.
Yes, so the original 1.2 Noctilux was only produced in black for serial production. They made a number of prototypes in silver that are extraordinarily rare.
Like 3 or 4, maybe?
No one knows for sure. There's less than 5 from what we understand.
Yeah. And they're ridiculously
they're hundreds of thousands of dollars. So as part of their, what do they call a classic line?
The Leica...
I always forget what they call that.
Classic. I think it's like
they started with the fan bar, and then they reissued the 28 Summicron, and now they've reissued the 1.2.
I think it was the other way around. We did the
Summicron first. Sorry, then the fan bar.
Yeah.
And now the 1.2 Noctilux, which they've done a limited run of 100 in silver chrome, so brass barrel, brass everything, and a standard production, although limited by how many they can physically make.
Sure.
In black anodized aluminum barrel, which will just be, they're not numbered or anything like that. So
should be standard production, but we don't know how many.
Right. I mean, they're just not capable of making a lot of these. If anyone remembers when the .95 came out, how difficult they were to get and how long those waiting lists were, several years.
Extremely long.
I imagine the 1.2 is going to be very similar. But we have here today a consolation prize, if you will. Not quite as good as an original 1.2, but the next best thing.
Sure.
We actually have the new 1.2 in black and in silver.
Oh.
I don't know if we can get a close-up on these beauties here. I will try not to drop them.
Please don't.
And David, you want to go over some of the specifics while I am...
Sure. Trying to get them in focus?
Holding these? I guess you're only do one at a time.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. All right.
That is a good idea. I like that plan.
Yeah, this is black, and I'll take off
Beautiful.
the hood.
Yeah.
So you can get a sense of how small it really is. It's an E49 filter thread, as you can see on this. Oh, no, it doesn't. Oh, no, this is the slide for the original 1.2.
Yeah. So make believe that Josh is not holding this one.
Yeah. So David, why don't you talk a little bit about the original 1.2 Noctilux?
Sure. Okay. So it was introduced in 1966. It was produced for 9 years to 1975, and it was the first use.
Let's do the wide shot.
Yeah, let's go to the wide shot.
Yeah, while we're blabbing on. Here we go.
So it was the first use of aspheric lens technology in a production lens. Again, Leica had been doing military contracting and, very high-tech sort of bespoke lens design for industrial and military applications. But for the consumer market, this was the first lens that they ever produced in series that utilized this aspheric technology. And basically what that means is exactly what it sounds like. It's not spherical. So traditional lenses are rounded. They have a spherical surface. Aspheres have a varying degree over their surface that are not entirely spherical. In the modern era, we're used to seeing so many Leica lenses right now with the initials ASPH after them. Okay, that indicates that they have at least one aspheric element in them. This is modern technology, and right now Leica uses computer-aided manufacturing, CNC machining, to actually get these elements to their proper shape. Back in the day, there was no polishing machines that could do aspheric polishing. So every single one of these, every one of the 1,757, if that number is to be believed, lenses produced, 2 of the elements were hand polished. So no 2 lenses are identically the same.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting, right? It's sort of that handcrafted
type of legitimately thing. Handmade. I mean, we're talking about a lens made over 9 years with less than 2,000 produced.
Yeah.
So you're talking 200 plus or minus per year. I mean, Leica probably makes that many lenses in a day now. So that just goes to show you just how challenging that original 1.2 was to make, and also why they're so valuable today. It's a lens that's so exotic, I don't think I could justify using one if I owned it. Although I probably would. It would be, I would have to be very careful about where I went with it.
Now, it also has a very unique look in terms of, having that Leica magic to it.
Yeah.
We actually have, now this is an interesting thing before Jose pops over to the slide. The person who was going to loan us the lens, his name is Harry. He lives over in Germany, and we've met a number of times at different events. One of these events, Josh and I were at Lights Park for the Lights Park 3 opening, right?
That was 2018?
18?
17?
2018?
I don't know.
2018.
Yeah.
Summer of 2018. And towards the end of the festivities, one day, Josh and I were actually talking to Peter Carba, who's the head of optics. And Harry came up and showed Peter and us what was on his camera, which was
an original 1.2 Noctilux, the
Yes.
one we were trying to get, and
okay.
Yeah.
So he has one of these, and he gave it to Peter along with his camera and said, "Here, Peter, would you like to try this? You've seen it before." And what was interesting is Peter Carba, who is obsessed with 50 millimeter lenses.
Yeah.
I mean, obsessed with 50 millimeter lenses. He had never actually used one before.
Yeah.
Which was incredible.
Yeah. Well, that shows you how, like, if he had never used one, I don't feel quite as bad not having one on our shelf,
And he is basically the designer of the 0.95 Noctilux.
Yeah.
So there's some interesting history there.
Yeah.
So Harry gave him the camera with the lens, and unfortunately, the subject that he chose
Could have been better. Could have been better.
Could have been better.
Yeah. Could have been worse, though.
But here we go.
Yeah, we got that shot somewhere. Hey, there he is.
So that is me, shot with a original 50 millimeter 1.2 Noctilux by Peter Carba himself. And yes, it is actually in focus. So there you go.
He does know how to use a Leica lens. I will give him credit for that.
Yeah.
I would hope the guy that designs them knows how to use them. So that gives you, this is probably the only real world sample we're going to show. I don't know why we had to pick that. No, that's
it's the only one I had handy.
So it's a special lens, and if you own one, I mean, take good care of it. they're
not making anymore.
They're not making anymore, although they are, but they're not.
They're not making more original ones.
Yes, exactly. So the reissue is another story. So we'll
get into that.
We'll roll back into probably the reissue. I'll show you the silver one a little bit later.
Sure.
So that's the 1.2. That's really where the Noctilux nomenclature started. That is the first Noctilux, and a lens that it's more like a mythical figure than anything else because they're so rare. As we go to,
it kind of reminds me of the 35 double Aspherical.
Yeah,
There's some parallels
fair.
there
Yeah.
because it was produced in such limited quantities,
Yeah.
and it was hand polished A-spheres.
Yeah.
Very, very similar, but obviously at a slightly different era there.
Yeah, quite a bit. They're 30 years, to give or take 20 something years.
But between those two lenses, it really started Leica down that path of exploring aspheric technology.
Yes. So
Very important lens.
after the struggle of trying to produce as many of the 1.2s as they could, in 1975, Leica, I would say, changed or updated the Noctilux to the F1. This is the Noctilux that's been produced for the longest amount of time.
Yes.
It's the one that is probably, I don't want to say necessarily most familiar to people, but it certainly has...
I think most people associate, when they think Noctilux, this is what they're thinking of.
Yeah,
they're thinking of the F1.
The F1. So the F1 Noctilux did away with the aspherical elements because of the complexity of production, but they used more exotic glass to compensate for that. So it actually performs quite well in terms of, or relative to the original 1.2, despite the fact that it doesn't have aspherical elements. Now, I'm going to get a bit into the version history of the F1. Because if you look in a Leica book or you look online, every F1 has the same Leica catalog number up until the very last version, which had the slide out shade. But all the ones before that, so all the ones from 1975 to 1994, 20 years of production all have the same product code. But if you're a Leica nerd like we are, or if you're a collector or you have particular something you're looking for, there are actually 4 distinct versions of the f1 Noctilux 50mm lens.
Before we go into that,
Yes.
and we will talk about all this,
Yes.
I do want to also hit on just a little bit of the history of the F1.
Oh, yeah, of course. This applies to all of them.
It does.
Yeah,
It applies to
good.
all 4 versions. So this lens, a little, we didn't put it on the slide, but a little bit of trivia.
Yeah.
Most Leica lenses were produced certainly of this era, were produced in Germany, and some were produced in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
How many, Josh?
We've asked this on the show before.
I know, Noctilux F1s. Well, actually, we should do this. I'm going to ask. I'm not. You don't answer this.
All right.
So I'm asking you guys, and I want to see answers in the chat. How many Noctiluxes F1s of the 4 versions produced were made in Germany? And I'll give you a minute on that one while I fill you in. So the lens was designed by the famed Dr. Walter Mandler, who was head of optics for a long period of time, had a lot of influence on Leica lenses. The last of the Mandler designs is alive and well with us with the 50mm Summicron M, the classic, just as is, not the Apo version. And it's so good that they haven't really been able to find a suitable economical replacement for that classic design.
Yeah.
So Mandler designed the F1, and it was designed in a time when most people were using black and white. Color wasn't as prevalent. So the lens is famously uncorrected in the blue channel, which we'll probably see when we start doing some photos.
Yeah.
Which has a very beautiful classic Leica glow on black and white. But on color can be noticeable wide open.
Yeah, there's how do I say this? One of the questions we get a lot on the show is, what is the best insert question here, right? And the reality is there's no Noctilux that is the sharpest of its focal length. The Noctilux is not about sharpness. It's not about performance in using the traditional metrics that we would go over when we talk about a modern lens like the 50 Apo or the 35-1.4. This lens is for a different purpose, for a different mindset. And that makes it a little more fun to talk about because you can start to get really, you can wax poetic, if you will, about why use a Noctilux and what does it do. Even just handling the lens, even just attaching the hood is an experience, at least as someone like me who's been playing with these all day, which is probably one of my favorite tests I've done because I have every version of the Noctilux, minus the original one too, at my disposal for the weekend to play with and do all these tests and try them out and mess around. I weighed them and all this stuff. Super nerdy, but you guys know me now. That's not a surprise. So let's get into a little bit of the versions, and then we'll actually do a little showing what you see through the what does it look like.
Yeah.
So yes.
Okay, what does the chat say?
Oh, the chat says 0001 00001. 0 is correct. Everyone who said 0,
you are correct.
There's no prize, but the prize of being right.
So we're going to say that again. The piece of information I left out is Dr. Mandler, while being head of optics, was in Canada. And this lens was only ever produced in Canada, all the way through the very last ones in 2008.
Yes. So there you go.
Congratulations.
There are no German F1s.
No, not that we know of.
Not that we know. I mean, there could be like a prototype somewhere. I don't know. But in the practical sense, no. So the first version of the F1 was introduced in 1975 and only produced for 3 or so years.
Show that
Now,
one there.
We'll get a close-up of this here with this, and we get the slide too. There we go. Now, the biggest distinguishing factor of the version 1 is it has a 58mm or E58 filter thread. This is the only Noctilux F1 with an E58. All successive versions had an E60. The lens shade is 12519. I don't know if you can see that. There it is. So it's a distinct lens shade for this model. And it kind of has this like rotating design where you can see there's like little pins here and the hood seats into these pins and then kind of clips on. Yeah, kind of delicate, but cool. It looks, it's got the vented, yeah. So this lens weighs, according to Leica specs, I'm going to look at my notes here, 580 grams. Sorry, I'll pull the lens here. According to my actual weight, which I weighed this exact lens without the hood, 615 grams. So I found that interesting. I don't know if Leica weighs them with the hood, which was 635 grams, or that's more. I don't even know. So I weighed it. It's 615 grams. So this is the F1 version 1. Again, the only one with a 58 millimeter filter size, and it has the 12519.
Well, that was very pretty. You should show the front element again there.
Right?
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Well, that's reflecting our studio lighting in there. Let me take off.
Very nice.
You can see my shirt and my face.
That is, I don't know if that's better.
Yeah, so this is the F1. And thank you, Blair, for letting us borrow this if you are watching. I appreciate that. So
We're gonna.
what I'll do is, why don't I go through the 4 versions for like, it'll take me like 10 minutes, and then we'll
shoot all the F1s.
We'll shoot them all. Yeah.
Perfect.
I think it's easier. So okay, that's the version 1. I'm not going to like linger too much here. Then that was only made for 3 years. Then we go on to the version 2 of the F1 Noctilux. Now, the main difference here is that this lens, if we can get a close up whenever Jose is ready, this lens has an E60 filter size, so a 60 millimeter filter thread size, unlike the first version, which was a 58. Unchanged optically. All F1 Noctiluxes, all 4 versions, are the same optically. They produce the same images, they produce the same look, it's the same lens. Now this lens also has a shade that kind of goes onto these little pins. This is the easiest way to identify a version 2 from a version 3 F1. All version 2s are going to have these little pins for the hood. Version 3s do not. Rick says the video quality is low.
No, that looks good for us.
Rick, you should get off your dial-up, I guess. Just giving you a hard time. Anyway, that is the version 2, and the lens shade, if I'm in your way, David, here.
Nope, we're good.
Lens shade is 12539. So again, you can see it's like kind of fiddly. Anybody who says that the version 4 has a fiddly lens shade has ever tried, here we go, attaching one of these version 2s. So E60 version 2. All right, now we're going to go to the version 3 F1. And the only difference here is they changed the lens shade design from a sort of twist on to a clip on. You'll see it's got these little buttons here, and you just pop these out. So it's still an E60, still all the same optics, except this has a clip-on shade, so it doesn't have the little posts here on the side. It does have, if I can show this little sort of tongue here, and that is where the hood goes. So it looks like the hood can just clip on in any direction. Actually, no, it only goes on one very specific way. So if you've got one of these, just be aware, you can see it kind of seats on nicely. Looks cool. This is the 12544 hood. So version 3 finally switched from the twist-on shade to the clip-on shade. And finally,
and they made that one for 11 years.
Oh yeah, this one was made for 11 years. So this is the second most produced. This is from 1982 to 1993.
It only took them 3 tries to figure out the correct hood placement.
Yeah, it's crazy, but okay. And last but not least, before we show some pictures, or some real-time pictures, is the version that I think is my favorite and probably the most well-known, which is the version 4, made from 94 to 2008. So really pretty recent in the grand scheme of the Leica timeline. And of course, the most obvious change here is it has a retractable built-in lens shade. So no more fiddly removable shade. It has a retractable shade, still a 60 millimeter filter design. But of course, the best part about these lenses is if you get it one that's new enough, they actually came 6-bit coded from the factory. Of course, any of these lenses can be 6-bit coded by Leica, but it's really nice to get an original 6-bit lens out of the box. So the
keep in mind, that's only going to be from the last 2 years of production, from 2006 to 2008.
Yeah, you gotta get a late one.
So you can tell if these come in a silver box, they're pretty much factory 6-bit code.
Of course, I'm forgetting. I have to thank Alan for the version 2 and Stefan for the version 3. Sorry.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, seriously. And Christine, who also loaned me a version 3. So thank you, Blair, Alan, Christine, Stefan.
And thank you for having functional lens shades as well.
Yes, that was a huge criteria. Is you had to have the hood. These hoods are $500 to $1,000 to replace. So if you go online and you start looking at buying a used F1 and you wonder why some are wildly cheaper than the other ones, it's probably because they don't have the hood or the hood is broken, because that's a hugely valuable component. David and I were wondering why nobody's 3D printed one of these hoods yet.
Right.
But
you guys should.
Anyway, yeah. So I personally prefer the version 4 over the other 3, just on average, because they're new enough that the focusing is smooth on all of them. The aperture ring, they don't generally need a CLA service. In my opinion, if you were to buy version 1 through 3, I wouldn't put it into use, like if you're really going to use it, without a CLA and ideally a 6-bit coating, because these lenses have a lot of sample variation. They're all, the newest version 3 is still going to be over 20 years old. So you really want Leica to go through the lens top to bottom, get everything lined up and squared away, especially if you're going to use it with a rangefinder and not use a live view or VisiFlex.
For sure.
So whereas the version 4s, for the most part, are far more likely just to be solid right from the gate without needing a CLA, especially a really recent one. This is a 381 serial number. It's pretty new.
Yeah, and if they had been factory 6-bit coded or sent in for 6-bit code service to add it on, they're actually replacing the rear lens mount and calibrating it to a digital body.
Yes.
So that is very crucial, because when these were initially built, the specification was much, much looser in terms of focus calibration.
Yeah, they one of the interesting things about using these 4 lenses today, because I use them one after another, I know Blair, who loaned me this version 1, E58, had indicated this was CLA'd by Leica recently, and I could tell, just the smoothness of the focusing when you're trying to dial in that very precise amount, and the click stops in the aperture ring really firm. And then you go to the version 2, fine, but definitely not as smooth for those really precise adjustments. So I could see the value of a service immediately just by going through the different versions. This version 4 has not been CLA, but it works perfectly. Again, to me, the best part of version 4. So why don't we pop on?
Let's do it.
Why don't we just start with the version 1?
Okay.
And then we have an SL2 here that David is manning. And right now there's just a 50 Lux 1.4 on there, which we're going to take off. I'll take the whole assembly off, probably, right? You want to just put this on like that? Now, I'm handing this to David. If you're watching, please, if you own this lens,
very careful.
let's not allowing him to drop this.
Trust me, I'm a professional.
I know that, but
Professional what?
Is, all right, so why don't we... I want you to make sure this is not in focus, because I want people to see... Let me just pick that.
I'm at infinity. Yep.
Okay, David's at infinity.
Yeah, that looks great.
He's going to go... Jose, can you switch to the... All right, so this is our scene out of focus. Now, we're using the SL2 with the M adapter L, version 1. David, why don't you kind of narrate us what you're going to do right now?
So I'm at infinity focus right now, and I'm just going to pull focus. So here we go. I'm at 10 feet, 8 feet, 5 feet. Was that 5 feet? 4 feet, and 3 feet. Okay, so our minimum focus is, we set the subject just slightly past minimum focus. And there we go. So we've got a little treat here for our photo subject. This is an original Leica Stife Bear, which is also collectible. And that is actually one of my wife's Christmas ornaments that she got. It is a Leica R8 in silver chrome.
Super nice. Oh, they never
ceramic.
They made the R8, right? I'm thinking the R9 was good.
Yeah. The R8 was silver and black, and
this looks okay. But what if we actually activate focus assist, and let's see what it looks like.
Here we go.
Down and dirty. Can we go full frame, Jose?
Yeah, let's go full frame.
There we go.
Okay.
All right. Hopefully everybody can see this here.
Boop. And we're magnified. Now
tell me, David, how this lens feels, how the focus ring feels on this lens. Pretty linear?
I think so. It's a little, there's a little bit of wobble.
Well, that's from the adapter, actually.
Oh, there's play from the adapter.
Yeah, this is what happens when you start to get an F1, is all the little things you never notice.
Right.
You start to notice. So I also think this adapter's a little jangly.
So let's take a look at
sue me on that.
At some text here.
Yeah, that's obviously out of focus. You can see how quickly on the F1 Noctilux, regardless of version, because they're all
very
the same,
sensitive.
How quickly the focus disappears. I mean, in dead center, the point of focus is like kind of sort of sharp, and then as soon as you go off center, it falls off immediately. This is good for portraits or any kind of like center-based subject matter. I want to, David, go to the here we go, to the lights back there. People can see the shapes.
Yep.
Our bear has creepy eyes a little bit. So this is
the football shape.
Yeah, this is wide open, right? Here on F1, yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's just nothingness. There we go. But you can see when you go back to the bear's creepy face, just how...
look at that light.
That's
kind of
nice.
Yeah. So the different colors also render slightly differently, which is interesting. So you see the football shape actually changes orientation. So it's sort of radially oriented.
Yes. Can we go back to the old creepy face?
Creepy face.
There we go. So you can see how little depth of field there is. I mean, the front of the bear's nose is, I don't want to say the word sharp because that's a generous description.
So I'll pull focus to the nose.
Yeah.
So the nose is sharp and now the eyes are not.
Yeah. And this is a teddy bear. Those eyes are...
There's the eyes.
Less than an inch away from the... I mean, it's really... And you need to be very, very precise if you want to use this lens wide open and you want to make sure you nail your focus. Mm-hmm. You can start to stop down and get some sharpness back. There is focus shifting on the F1s between F1 and F2.8. So basically, as you stop down between those aperture settings, the focus point will shift a little bit. So you may need to refocus. This is easy on an SL2 or with the VisiFlex, harder on a rangefinder because you can't actually see that happening. Mm-hmm. So you have to be aware of that. If you own an F1 and have it CLA'd, you generally would have it calibrated for a certain aperture, ideally with your camera. Yeah. And which would usually be wide open since that's what you're paying for.
Should we show stop down?
Yeah, why don't you zoom in and show them as
you take a picture.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. So take a picture. Make sure you focus on the nose. That'll be our
the nose. The eye. Let's do the eyes.
Want to do the eyes? Okay.
Yeah,
the creepy eyes. Okay.
So we're gonna focus assist again, right on the old. Wow. Yeah, on the eyes there. They do look a little.
We have
creepy.
self-timer on. We're gonna need it. I know from last week.
We do.
Okay.
We do. Here we go.
All right. So F1 version 1 SL2 wide open. All right, let's take a look.
Okay, well, I'm going to do another one here.
Oh, yeah,
let's stop down to...
Let's go to 2.8.
2.8.
Yeah, but make sure we have to refocus, so...
Just visually, I could see that it definitely sharpened up considerably.
No, you didn't really get much shift. Very little. It's good. All right, beautiful.
Hands off.
All right, let's take a look at playback.
Okay.
How's this live view thing working for you guys this time? We like it? Someone tell me. All right, so that is F2. And then let's go to F1. Wow, look at that. That's 2.8, sorry. So F1 and F2.8. Look at the difference. I mean...
The color changed, too.
Everything's changing. Yeah. Contrast, sharpness. It really starts to lose some of that magic at F2.8, although not entirely. And don't get me wrong, it's nowhere near the performance of a modern lens.
Yeah, let's zoom in so we can see the difference here. Okay, so there is our creepy bear. And we'll go to the next shot.
Wow.
I mean, it sharpened up considerably.
Considerably, yes. Yeah. This gives you an idea of what F1 looks like.
F1.
Yeah.
2.8.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go to that. Yeah, there we go.
But look at what happened to our bokeh stars here. So, again, that's F1. And that's 2.8.
Yeah. You can see there's 10 aperture blades in this lens. You can start to see them making an appearance. So it really allows you to change the character of the lens dramatically. It's one of the fun parts about the F1s and the 1.2, but I think the F1s more so is it's kind of like two lenses in one. Mm-hmm. It's one lens wide open and another lens entirely at 5.6.
You get that dreamlike glow.
But the thing is, I just need to say this right now before I show stuff at some point. Every modern 50 that Leica makes is better than the F1.
Like
51.4, 50 F2, 50 Summicron, 50 Apo, 50 Noctilux 0.95. All of them are better, objectively better than the F1. They have less vignetting. Mm-hmm. They're sharper in the center. They're sharper in the corners. Now, I'm not saying
they're technically better.
They're technically better. Yeah. I'm not saying that makes them better for photography, but people ask me, "Oh, can I get an F1 and stop it down to 5.6?" And it's like, no, it's not. It's just not. It's not that far off, but it's not the same.
But it's not. No.
And the ease of use of a modern lens wide open in terms of the positive reinforcement when you get tack sharp focus is dramatically higher. The Noctilux wide open has so little contrast that you have to be extremely precise, and it will slow you down. I mean, you can see kind of what David is going through, and really slowing down.
Moving really slowly, so I don't drop these beautiful.
Oh yeah, I know that. Yes, you're not allowed to drop anything. All right, so that is the version 1.
You can mount it right on there.
Why don't we show? I mean, they're all the same. Let me just put a version 4 on there. Mm-hmm. We'll skip. I'm not gonna bore everybody with the same picture.
Yeah, that is an important takeaway. It's just a redesign of the hood.
There you go, sir.
The optics are the same with all these versions of the F1.
Yeah. And at least for us, and all of my Noctilux shooting is spent at or near a minimum distance. That's really where you get the magic. I can't think of a time I've really shot it at infinity. I know Peter's asking about infinity.
All right,
I've not tried it. All right, here we go.
And this one's 6-bit coded.
Yeah, this F1 this is a version 4 on the SL2, still an F1.
That was nice. I didn't have to set it.
Yeah,
That's
well,
always
that was
convenience.
the one you just put on was 6-bit coded.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah, you just didn't notice.
Okay.
That was just Blair had it coded.
Okay.
Craig, if Craig is watching, this is going to be your lens next week. So.
All right.
Don't
So again, I'm doing the same thing here. We're at infinity at F1.
Yeah.
And it's also worth noting, I just wanted to be clear, the two shots that you saw previously, they shifted in color. There was that bluish haze. That's not because there was a problem with the white balance or the lighting. The lighting is color consistent, daylight balance lighting. And I've got a daylight balance, white balance set in the camera. It's not on auto. So the only color shifting you're seeing is actually due to what's happening inside the lens. It's kind of an important takeaway. All right, so we're at infinity and we're going to work our way towards...
The thunder?
That was thunder.
Wow. Can you guys hear that thunder? That's terrible.
Probably
if we lose
not.
power, I swear I'm
we
never
didn't do
doing
it.
another live stream again. All
Okay, here we go. So this is at infinity, and we're going to come in here. Okay, and let's zoom in.
This one, David, try. Bill's asking to try it at 1.4. So let's do when we shoot the picture, F1 and F1.4 this time.
Sure.
Just so they can see what stopping down one stop looks like.
You're not allowed to put your hands on the table.
I'm like crossing my arms.
Okay, so that's at F1. Ooh, we're a little bouncy.
I think I don't want to talk or breathe.
Okay, that's
Right.
at F1.
And let's go to 1.4. Now you may have to refocus. if
Yeah,
there's some
let's go ahead and
focus.
refocus that.
Only a little bit.
That wasn't bad.
It's hard to detect, but it can, depending on what you're shooting, it can be there.
And 1.4. In fact, here, just so everyone can see, we're going to just go a couple stops down since we have it on there, and it's the last one we're going to do.
Okay.
And it is representative of all the F1s.
Yes. Again, I'll say this 100 times. Your preference for the F1 you might purchase is going to be based on what hood you like, what you find accessible, what condition you like, etc. It's not going to be about performance because they all work the same.
Okay, we got that. And we're going to go to F4. Oof, longer exposure.
Long shutter speed. Yeah.
Nobody breathe. Everybody hold their breath. And we're going to go to 5.6.
But don't forget, I have a bunch of these tests, so we don't have to necessarily
I know.
show too much stuff.
And we're going to go to F8.
Yeah.
Woof. Okay. Now, let's take a look at what our results are. I think we're still saving. Oh, okay. It is changing. Oh,
you got
wow.
it, you got
Yeah,
it.
there we go. Okay, so that one is at F1. And I'm just going to zoom in so you can kind of see. Let me zoom out a little bit. Just so
we can see the changes. Yeah, there we go.
That's good. That way we can see the bokeh and we can see some detail.
So there's F1.
F1,
1.4.
1.4, and I'll zoom in just so you can see.
Yeah, we're gaining some sharpness.
definitely better.
Yeah. You're losing a little bit of that magic, but you are gaining some sharpness.
Yep.
And you can't see in this image, but there's less vignetting as you start to stop down.
Yep, and that's at F2. That's 2.8 that we already saw. That's F4. And now, I mean, it's
sharp. In
yeah,
the center.
it's sharp, yeah.
But you should re-show these images with the mug. I think you can see off-center sharpness.
5.6 and F8. So now, I mean, clearly very high resolving, and I will, like Josh mentioned, I mean, look at all that.
Yeah,
So
go to the mug.
It's
at the bottom.
pretty high performance considering this is a classic non-aspheric design.
Here we go. So now let's scroll through some of these shots.
Right.
You can see off-center sharpness.
So we're going to go backwards. So
Yeah.
this is F8, 5.6, 4,
Yep.
2.8,
Yep.
2,
Yep.
1.4, and 1.
You can see how dramatically different this lens is at F1 versus even 1.4. The difference is significant.
Yeah. And,
Which is why I say you live wide open with this lens.
and it's not just sharpness, it's contrast as well.
Yes.
Overall
everything,
image contrast.
every metric is different. So it's fun. It's not a lens you would use for maximum performance, but it's a different animal altogether. So we talked about the the F1s. Why don't we go to what succeeded the F1? David, do you want to talk about what's next? You want me to talk about it?
You talk about it since.
Oh, I can hold it and you can talk about it. So
sure.
So I'll introduce it. Why don't you kind of talk about it a little bit? So
Okay.
in 2008, they discontinued the F1. They came out with this run of these last 100 edition lenses in a humidor. It was
Black
fabulous.
lacquered
It was
humidor.
really, really nice.
The last 100.
Yes. And then we got the 50mm f/0.95 Aspheric, which is the lens that's still in production today. This is a Peter Carver design. Why don't we get a close up and I will show.
Well, there's also slightly more trivia with the Canadian part of the story. That was the last. You can come back just super quick to the main show. Before we jump into that, so the F1 Noctilux, this one, the version 4, was the last Canadian produced lens because Leica did have a subsidiary in Canada called Elcan. Now, at the time in 2008, Elcan no longer existed. They had actually been that part of the company had actually been sold to Raytheon for doing basically high performance lenses for secret purposes. I don't know, satellites and whatnot, surveillance, spy planes, you name it. So they used optical technology, but they were using it for just straight up non-consumer use. And they also, at that Raytheon facility, also produced IMAX projection lenses that would withstand high heat. All that kind of came out of the Elcan Lights knowledge base. But it was also becoming, I guess in their contract, they still had to produce the Noctilux. And I think it was just a point of they no longer could produce the Noctilux sufficiently. So I think Leica started examining, even before 2008, looking at a way to replace that design and bring it back to Germany and kind of take it to that next level using the aspheric floating element technology that Carba and his team had pioneered, over the past decade prior to this lens. So now I think we're ready to talk about this lens.
All right, back to the close-up. So the quick highlights on this: the .95 maintains the 60mm filter thread size of its predecessors. It also has an integrated hood, although a much nicer locking design, similar to the version 4, but just better. And it's metal, not plastic. Quite a bit larger. When I weighed the version, or excuse me, the .95 on my scale, I got, where did we go here? 768 grams versus 585 grams on the version 4 F1. So considerably heavier, but performance-wise, ease of use-wise, no comparison. This is a mind-blowing lens when you consider what it's capable of. But I'm going to stop talking about it because instead I'm going to let David put it on the camera and we're going to show you what it can do. Now, David was around when this lens was launched. What was that like back in '08?
'08?
Give me the F1 first.
Sure. It was exciting because this was kind of groundbreaking. It was the first lens faster than F1, broke the light barrier, I don't know. Insert marketing speak here.
Like that,
but it's definitely a lot heftier. I think, here, we should show these side by side.
Let me...
Do that on the close-up first before we get to this.
Okay.
Take the rear cap off of both. Because this is very telling. I would say that while they kept the E60 front size, the actual length of the lens and the kind of the heft of it is much more significant.
Yeah, it's pretty dense. It really...
And you can even see from the front element, look how much less bezel there is around the glass.
Yeah.
There's just more glass in the .95.
Yeah. All right. Pop that f.95.
Nope, the other one.
Give me the other one.
All right. So yeah, this is again using floating element for focusing that maximizes close focus to infinity performance instead of just optimizing for one set distance, which is traditional.
Yeah, and this has now 11 aperture blades. I'm just making sure my information's right. Forgive me. 11 blades with 8 elements versus 10 blades and 7 elements on the F1s.
Hold on.
Don't break that one. Well, that one's yours. You can do whatever you want. Please don't, though. Oh, God. There we get it. All right. So let's see how the F0.95 50 Noctilux performs.
All right. Lens profile. Yes.
Auto, just gotta put back on
yeah.
auto, yeah.
There we go. Okay. So we're at infinity, just to keep everything
Consistent, yeah.
consistent, okay? And here we go.
You're wide open, right?
I'm wide open.
Okay.
0.95. Breaking the light barrier. Now, you can see just visually, there's definitely more contrast than the F1.
Significantly more.
Yeah, I mean, I can just focus solely on the big image here. Now, if I zoom in for focus magnification, I mean, you can see in the eye, the creepy eyes, as everyone says. We can definitely see a little more. Now, you saw a glint of something else there. And it is worth noting, wide open, there's a little bit of chromatic aberration.
Yes.
As you can see here, that glint of pink in the eye. And that's certainly, it is characteristic of this lens. The good news is that purple fringing is extraordinarily easy to remove just with the eyedropper in Lightroom, and you can take it out.
Yeah, it's actually the easiest. It's literally one click. So,
it is.
And I'll show that in Lightroom a bit later.
Okay.
We're doing great on time, actually.
Doing good?
Yeah.
And, again, there you can see when this is a silvery object, it's front focused, and you can see that.
Yeah, you can see it in the reflections there, yeah. Which is, part of the lens, but thankfully extremely easy to remove.
And you can see when you shift focus the other way, it goes a little bit green. So that's, that is lateral chromatic aberration.
Yeah, so let's,
okay.
And you can see the lights, the autofocus lights.
Yeah, let's do the shot sequence, and then we'll show the lights and everything. Okay.
We're going to do the eyes, right? Yeah.
Gonna do the eyes. Okay, hands off the table. Ooh.
Yeah, I'm not touching anything.
That was me. That was me,
Okay,
guys.
I don't like it.
Here we go. Hands off. Take a shot. Okay, that's 0.95. Now we're going to go to 1.4. Just going to double check focus. And we've got 1.4. We've got 1.4. Try that again.
There we go.
Okay. And we're going to go to F2.
I'm actually pretty excited for this video to live on the channel. I feel like
this is going to be great.
It's going to be a great reference for anyone just thinking about buying a Noctilux, not only the versions, but how do they really perform real world?
Sure. Because
At
everyone
least
shoots teddy bears.
Teddy bear photography.
Teddy bear photography.
If anyone here is a professional teddy bear photographer, please let me know.
Okay, 2.8. Here we go. Okay, 2.8. Now we're going to F4. And 5.6.
From a usability standpoint, the 0.95
oh yeah, it
crushes the F1.
I mean, it's a modern lens.
Yes, I
it's
know.
A modern lens.
You gain an appreciation for modern lens construction when you start using these in sequence. That's all I'm going to say.
So that was F8. I think that is plenty.
Yes, I think so too.
All right.
Why don't you show us what we got, David?
Here we go. Doing a little playback. Now, where did we... Oh, wow. Was that... Nope. Hold on.
Well, you didn't extend the hood, so there's your first, but you got some flare.
That is possible.
Which I warned you about because of the
we have light,
stray light. There's literally a light pointing at this side of this lens.
All right, hold on. I've just got to figure
try
out.
Try one more at 0.95 to make sure we're not.
You want to? Okay, let's try.
It could just be from the fact that it's 0.95.
Well, that's 0.95 with the
What's
shade.
the point of buying this lens and shooting it at
Oh
f2?
wow, no, look, Josh.
Was it different?
Oh my gosh,
let's see.
Okay, that's with no shade.
Yep. Wow, holy moly. Well, you just saw in real time the value of a lens shade. And David and I had knocked them all the time.
Wow.
So I guess now we are proven very wrong.
Wow.
I love
Okay,
it.
no lens shade. Lens shade. I definitely have to reshoot that test now.
Yeah, while you're saying that, I'm going to say, so Industrious asked, what's the point of buying this lens and shooting at f2? It's like, what's the point of buying a Ferrari and not driving at the top of speed all the time? I mean, I'm making fun of you, but it's actually a great question. And the reality is, at f2, it still looks unique. You just gain some depth of field and some contrast because you may get, I don't want to say bored, but you may get a little tired of everything looking super magical, wild, Noctilux-y. And if you're out in the field and you're making images, your creative choices may mean shooting at 1.4, f2, or a 5.6. Because it's not always about the bokeh. It's not always about having the least amount of depth of field. Your creative objectives may be different. Thankfully, we can put it at f2. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
So now we learned a very valuable lesson.
Yes.
Always use the lens shade on a Noctilux,
Yes.
especially when you have
yes.
1, 2,
we have,
3,
you guys can't see,
4, 5
yeah.
studio lights.
There's a studio light that's essentially
right there.
acting as a flare light. This you can't see it, but it's so yeah. This is a pretty extreme scenario.
Probably should have flagged that. Okay.
It's okay.
So let's do playback here.
What do we got?
Yep, we're going to bring it up.
All right.
Okay. Now that one is, I think that one is F. We left at the last one, so this is going to be F8. All right, let's roll it backwards. F8, 5, 6, 4, 2, 8, 2, 1, 4, and 1.
9,
Okay.
5.
9, 5. Yeah. So let's start here at the beginning.
Yeah.
So
There you go.
okay, we could jump to the other view so we can talk about it. Okay, so this is 0.95. I'm going to back off just a little bit.
There we go.
Okay, just like we did before. 0.95, and it's definitely an improvement over the F1. You can see also, look at the shape of the out of focus areas.
Yeah.
So in the center, they're very, very round, but as we get to this, as we get off axis to the edges, they become transitioning from footballs in kind of the B zone there until we get to half moons at the periphery.
Mark asks, I heard the lens coatings may have changed between the F1 versions. I've heard this too. Now, I just spent 5 hours shooting all 4 versions next to each other. I think sample variation, how the lens was treated in a recent service, and if it has a recent service, has a higher impact on performance than slight coating variations.
Let's see here. So you were talking about this. Okay, so that you can see sharpness away from center, wide open, not amazing.
Very soft.
So let's see what happens when we stop down. So that's at 1.4, and that's at f2, 2.8, 4, 5, 6, and 8.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's off center. I'm gonna go back to our teddy bear again.
That's F8, right?
This is f8.
Yeah, that's really sharp.
Right, that's very, very sharp.
Right, so you may not want the Noctilux look
5,
all the
6.
time. So you go to F8 and it looks like normal
F4,
lens.
2.8, 2, and even at f2, we still have great sharpness. I mean, look at all the textural detail. And let's look, and the lights, still have a really pleasing, much rounder at 2.8, I think, than the F1 was.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a difference. This is much more pleasing in terms of the out of focus areas.
Let's keep going.
All right. So that is
That's
the
2.8, right? We didn't go to 9.5 all the way, did you? Yeah, keep going. Yeah. Yeah, okay, I'm just showing you the difference, how dramatic it is, just one there. Stop, yeah.
That's 0.95.
So the 0.95, the other sort of variant, if you will, is this lens, for the first time as a production version, came in silver anodized. So not silver chrome, so it weighs exactly the same. It's an aluminum barrel. Thank you, Michelle, for letting me borrow this. This is the Noctilux 0.95 Aspheric in silver anodized. They come with a really nice silver anodized cap, and this one has the optional or additional silver chrome rear cap that we sell, and I've talked about before. So again, not brass. It is aluminum. It weighs exactly the same as the black one. Put it on the scale, so I know this is true. But this is like a jewel to me. I mean, with the caps especially, it is gorgeous. If you've got a silver camera or just like the silver look, I think this is stunning. Every other way, it's exactly the same as the black one. And the other variant, of which I have a fake one, because I didn't want to borrow Vadim's real one and have it explode in shipping. This is the DuPont edition. Again, this is not a real lens.
It's a dummy.
This is a dummy. See, nothing there.
Oh my God, what happened to my picture?
It looks the same. And this way, nobody's expensive lens gets risked in shipping. This was all black with the 0.95 logo in white. I think they made 100 of these a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. It's pretty rare to see a special edition.
They made 95.
Did they make 95?
I think they made 95, yeah.
Duh. Yeah. It's quite rare to see a special edition Noctilux. We saw a few silver anodized ones before they officially launched the silver one in the M9P white set and a set from the Vienna store, I think. But they were still...
I think quantity of like 50, right?
Yeah, they were still aluminum.
Very small.
So...
Production versions,
black and silver, they're both really nice. The silver is just, especially with that silver chrome rear cap, is stunning. So again, thank you, Michelle, for that.
Just before we move on, I just have to know on the 50mm f1 version 6.
Oh, with the hood out. Okay.
Because there was such a dramatic difference in 0.95.
What did you say? Version 4.
Version 4.
Yeah, version 4. Okay.
Okay.
Get our versions right. Let's try this again.
We're going to go back.
And then we're going to do what everybody wants. And then I'm going to finally be able to say what I need to say about the 1.2. There's a lot of confusion about that lens.
All right, so let's kick back over to live view here. And
we'll just like to try with a, let's see the difference. You can see a difference, not as much.
you can see it on the table.
Not as much. Well, the bear's face a little bit.
Let me zoom in.
That makes sense because it's a shorter lens, so it has a smaller front element.
Yeah.
So it's not sticking out into the light as far.
I mean there's a
millimeters make a difference.
Yeah, you can see there. It's a little bit, basically you're picking up a little bit extra contrast in the shadows.
Yeah.
But it's not night and day like it was in the 0.95. I mean, the 0.95, yeah, basically the shadow, it's increasing overall lens contrast.
Yeah. So if you have an Noctilux, use your hoods.
Always use the shade.
There we go.
There it is.
Now,
There it is.
let's talk about the recent release, the Noctilux-M f1.2 Aspheric. Now, this is not an identical lens to the one from 66. That's impossible. It's a new lens.
The glass doesn't, the exact glass
Right.
does not exist
It
anymore.
is this. It is pays homage, pays tribute. Can I say with definitive if it's exactly the same optical design? No, because in 56, what is it, 60 years now? I can't do math. 60,
It's a lot of years.
almost 60 years
A lot
of
of years.
physical item construction. You're not gonna be able to make it the same. So it's without having an original 1.2 here to compare it to. I can't say exactly how it differs. But what I can say is what it's like to use the 1.2. Now, I said I was going to show the silver one, so I will. This is, let's get the close-up here.
It's pretty.
This is only 100 produced for the world. It is a brass barrel, so it's quite heavy. I weighed it at 486 grams without the lens hood or any other things. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. I'll take the hood off. You can see.
Should have brought the the acrylic presentation tube.
The acrylic. Oh, yeah. It comes in like this sort of retro packaging.
It's very
Here we
cool.
go.
Very cool.
So here it is, quite small, just like the black one. It's the same size, same specs, other than the weight. Really, really, really nice. It's got, I'll show you here, 16 blades. Can I catch? Oh, there we go.
Nice.
Look at that. Beautiful.
Very round.
Yeah.
Very, very round.
Really, really cool. So this is currently like the hot ticket, I guess, in the Leica world. It's gorgeous, I won't lie. But now the real test.
But is it made of brass?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a brass barrel.
Or are you sure
Yeah.
it's not made of unobtainium?
I mean, it feels like that. It's about as heavy as that would be.
I was gonna
So
say
let's
it's not.
let's
It's not
pop,
easy to get this.
Let's pop the. I'll make sure the hood is on so it doesn't fall off. Okay, let's pop the black 1.2 on the camera.
idea.
Yeah, I don't want to have to buy another one of these hoods. All right, I'm gonna make sure the hood is attached because we know how
Oh
important
yeah,
hoods
for
are.
sure.
You're all watching, David. Be very careful with this. I can't get you another one of those. So
And what I will say, just
Yeah.
right off the bat, especially coming off of the 0.95, this is much, much smaller and lighter.
yeah, I mean, think about it. It's a 49 millimeter filter versus a 60 millimeter filter.
Yeah.
That's significant in terms of
It's
difference.
very dense feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, really like quality
Yeah, it's
dense.
only about 100. My scale is about 100 grams lighter than the version 4 F1. So that's 20%.
How much less than the 0.95 though?
300 grams less than the
Yeah,
0.95.
and you feel it for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, this will, I imagine, is the first time anyone's shown live view through a reissue F1.2 Noctilux
Here it
on
is.
YouTube
Yeah.
with the dog under the table. Okay, everything is there.
Of a
Teddy bear.
like a teddy bear.
All right, let's see how this looks. Are you wide open?
Turn it on. I am wide open.
Okay.
Selecting. Should have updated the firmware on this.
No, there's no. They haven't updated the SL2 firmware yet, so we actually have
Only
to pick,
the M.
We have to
Only
pick
the
the
M.
original 1.2
Okay.
in the metadata. So let's do that.
Let me actually. It's faster just for me to restart this. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they reissued M10 firmware to have the lens profile. I think camera settings.
Yep.
The bottom there. There you go. I know you gotta. That's why I have it in my favorites menu when I do this
The
testing.
wrong way.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're doing M lens and we're selecting the original. Pardon my gawkiness here. 50 millimeter 1.2 11820. Correct.
Yes.
All right. Here we are.
Okay. Sweet.
There it is at infinity, because that's where we started previously. And we're going to focus, 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 and focus. It looks pretty good. I mean,
Yeah.
again, from here,
Yeah.
like from the
That's right.
big view.
Let me take my arms off the table here. Okay.
And I'm going to magnify.
Is this fully magnified? Oh, no, it's not. Okay. I was like, wait. I mean, here you can see a very similar experience to the F1,
Yeah.
where wide open is extremely soft in the center, a very, very, very small point of somewhat critical sharpness, quick fall off, definitely chromatic aberration.
Yeah, you can see just as I'm pulling focus on the nose, look between the nose and the bow tie. Let me back off a little bit. It's just, it's very shallow depth of field, obviously, as one would expect.
Yeah. Show the lights. The lights in the background, the Christmas lights or whatever they are. Generic holiday lights. No,
Okay.
The center ones. You can see here that these are pretty clearly defined. They're not as round as the .95. They're not as soft as the .95. Very different character.
Mm-hmm. And they turn kind of squished footballs in the corner to fatter footballs in the middle.
Yeah, let's go to the mug.
Not
so
bad.
here, this is higher contrast and a little sharper than the F1. Not quite as good as the .95. All right, let me get something really important out of the way. Can we go back to the wide shot?
Yeah, and look, as I'm even trying to focus on that, I can't actually get full focus.
Now, the 50 Noctilux 1.2 aspheric is not as good a lens as the 51.4 Summilux aspheric, the 50.95 Summilux aspheric, the 50 Summicron version 5, or the 50 Apo-Summicron. Now, if you're trained in the other manufacturers where a faster aperture equals better, and you look at the nomenclature and you see aspheric 51.2 and aspheric 51.4, you would say, oh, the 1.2's got to be better.
Right.
It's not.
No.
Not even close. I'm not saying that the 51.2 is a bad lens. It is beautiful and unique, and just using it is a special experience. But by no means, in any way, shape, or form, is it better, sharper, or any other metric that is performance-wise and technically measured, is it better than anything that Leica currently makes? So
it's better, right?
Yeah. So if you've got a 50 lux, if you've got a Summilux-M 51.4 spheric, this lens has been out for 15, 18 years. This lens is much sharper, wide open, stop down, less vignetting, more contrast than the 1.2.
I think we should show that too.
We will. Well, I can show that. I can show them in Lightroom easier than you can show them there, I think. But we'll still put it on here. So I just want to make sure that's clear that no current 50mm lens that Leica makes, other than the 1.2 obviously, is worse than the 1.2. The 1.2 is unique, but it is by no means a lens designed for performance. It's just not. Even stop down, it's not the same. The sharpness falls off from the center extremely fast. You've got a much, much more vintage looking kind of broken up bokeh background and more vignetting. So you don't buy this lens as a replacement for a Summilux or an Apo or a Summicron. It's not the lens's purpose. The purpose is to have something special, to have something rare and beautiful, and that pays homage to a really, really important part of Leica's history. I'm going to bookmark this clip because there's been a lot of confusion, and I get it, and that's why we're here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of numbers and facts and things and it's like Leica's been releasing stuff at a record pace, so I don't blame you, but hopefully this clears that question up, that it's really an opportunity to buy a brand new vintage lens with warranty.
Well, and that's what the Dambar was about. That's what the Summicron was about. So this continues in that Leica Classics range.
Why don't I quickly show Lightroom for a second, and then while you switch these.
We can do the, we haven't actually shot.
Oh, we haven't shot. I'm sorry.
Let's do the photos here.
Yeah.
And Jose can also whip up just some text overlay to make for the 50 Lux aspheric so people don't get confused.
All right. So why don't we switch to the camera live view, full frame, and let's do a quick stop down test.
Yep. Elbows off the table,
Oh,
sir.
sorry.
Thank you.
Of course I have it. There we go.
Oh, wow. Look, it is very dreamy when it's just out of focus.
Yeah,
Isn't
it's quite magical.
So we're going to attempt to focus on the eyes there. Okay, that's about right. So that is at 1.2.
You notice we have our hood on this time. We learned our lesson.
Oh, yeah.
For the past 20 minutes.
Okay, and this is 1.4, which is interesting.
Now, it's important to note that both the original 1.2 Noctilux and the reissue have aspherical elements, but the first one wasn't called ASPH. They've added ASPH to the name of the reissue to indicate that it has aspherical elements, because that's what they do now. But this shares that with the original.
Okay, so now we're going to go to 2.8. And we're going to go to f4. Still looks like we're getting a little bit of flare somewhere. Oh, somewhere.
Oh, maybe reflection off the table. We are like in
Could be,
Flare
yeah.
City right here. But it's
Yeah.
okay. It's just part of the fun.
F4, 5, 6, and F8.
Well, I think we're getting a flare from the reflection of the metal bar your background is being held
I
out.
don't know what.
That's hilarious. Well, this is again, that's
Very sensitive.
yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, it is reflecting off that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
love it.
Okay. So we've got them all. Let's jump back here.
Playback. All right.
Okay, so that's going to be F8, 5, 6, 4, 2, 8, 2, 1, 4, 1.2.
Okay.
And that should, yeah. Okay, that's the previous one. And notice the focal length actually changed a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, these are handmade lenses, so slight variation.
Yep. Okay, so let's zoom in and take a look. So we can, let me zoom out here. So clearly we've got, okay, that gives us our little lights, all that.
We're in aperture priority mode.
Yes.
Yeah, Bill. So we're not. Our shutter speeds are just being set by the camera.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the lighting is consistent.
Yeah.
And the scene is consistent.
Yeah.
So,
This is not scientific, but it's consistent.
okay, so that stopped down to 1.4. It actually sharpens up considerably at 1.4. F2 is
Yeah.
dramatic.
Dramatic.
I mean, wow, that is significant, in the center at least.
Yeah.
And let's take a look at what the lights look like. Still pretty soft.
Yeah, those 16 aperture blades, this is where they come in handy.
Yeah, really nice, really nice. All right, go back in. And now we're going to go to F4.
I love how we give people a hard time for pixel peeping. And
I
we've
know,
literally
right?
spent this whole episode pixel peeping.
5, 6.
Oh, you gotta have fun.
And F8. High contrast,
Yeah.
high sharpness.
Dramatic difference there.
I mean, look at, yeah, everything.
Now, I wonder if anyone who buys one of these is going to use it at F8. I don't know, but we certainly
never know.
do.
But look,
Let's look at the mug.
that text is super sharp. Wow, that's great.
Yeah, that's F8 though.
That's F8.
Well,
so
let's go the other way and see how we're doing.
5, 6.
Yep.
F4.
Yep.
2, 8.
Yep.
2,
Oh boy.
1, 4.
Oh geez.
And, oops.
Oh, that was 1 2.
Oh, 1, 2. Sorry.
Yeah,
1,
1
2. 1, 4. 2. 2, 8. 4, 5, 6.
But this is an SL2.
And then F8.
You're looking at
Yeah.
an SL2 feed, and the main cameras are SL2Ss. So heads up on that. Oh, wow.
Oh,
look at that.
hey, nice star pattern there too at F8. Listen, this the lens has some interesting character because you get some really nice bokeh balls at wide open, and then you get nice star pattern at F8. Those aperture blades really do the trick here, I gotta say.
We're at ISO at 400.
We
It's
are
not good enough to show you every Noctilux. You have to ask me what my ISO is.
we are at ISO 400.
I'm watching you, Mike.
All
I
right.
see you in there.
All right. So
Why don't we show a couple of images in Lightroom?
Sure.
This is not as exciting, but this switch to the old Computron, Jose, so I can show. All right, so you can show the full screen. You don't need to see my ugly face.
no, I just
Really?
Yeah, we don't have.
So I
full
can't pick
screen
my
view.
nose. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So I did 2 tests today. They're not what I would call scientific, where the lighting is not controlled, but this is indicative of what a user might do if they're in their home and they're looking to get a sense of how these lenses perform. So what I did was, the first test is a combination center sharpness and vignetting test. So I shot this test target super classically duct or gaffer taped to a door.
But really, what can't be gaffer tape?
This is the doorknob here in the bottom left. It's not an artifact. And I used these super, super awesome high-tech Post-it notes to indicate the aperture that I used. And this test, I'm just going to move some things out of my way here. This test is going to allow you to see both vignetting and center sharpness. So you can see this is the Reissue Noctilux, or the new Noctilux 0.95, wide open, 1.4, and you can see how dramatic.
Yeah.
After about 2.8, you lost it all. At F8, there's nothing to see. But now look at the 1.0, and I'm going to put the 1.0. This is the version 1 side by side with the 0.95, so you can see. Kind of. We should really go to them.
Why don't you just make the film strip a little smaller?
Oh, wait, how do I do that?
And drag that part down.
There it is.
There. A little better.
Yeah. You can see on the left, you've got the F1, the wide open, and the 0.95 wide open, just how much more vignetting there is. And here's the fun part. Let's go to the center. Okay, I don't know how obvious it is on YouTube, but on the left, you've got the f1 wide open. On the right, you've got the 0.95 wide open. I mean, there's no comparison, and that's the center. You start going off center, really gets dramatically different. I mean, you lose so much more detail so much more quickly with the f1, which to me is part of the appeal. It allows you to have a very, very high level of subject isolation with a very unique look, which would be hard to reproduce post-production. At least it would be agonizing. What I want to show, though, is just to address the elephant in the room, if you will, is the 1.2 compared to, let me just search my...
Hit plus sign for a bigger thumbnail. Sir.
I don't need that. I just want to see, I tagged all the ones that were wide open at wide open.
Nice.
So now I can see the 1.2. So here we've got, oops. Wait. Okay. On the left, 50 1.2 spheric, the new reissued f1.2 Noctilux on the left. On the right, 50-1.4 spheric, blue chip lens, a lens we've had for years that we know and love. And you can probably already tell on the full view, but when I go to the center, second here. Okay, so if anyone who asks me if the 51.2 is better than the 1.4, there's your answer. The answer is definitely not. Again, it doesn't mean it's a worse lens, but we're talking about sharpness here. And as soon as you start to get off center,
wow.
I mean, here, this both shows you the sharpness and the lenses we've used. I mean, the difference
Unbelievable.
is pretty insane. And you would say, well, what if I stop down the 1.2 so it's not wide open? All right, well, we can show you that. So here we've got the 1.2 stop down to f2 and the 1.4. Okay. All right, let's say we want to stop down the 1.2 to f2, and we're going to keep the 1.4 wide open as a challenge here. Let's see, let's give it a second to render. And even stop down 2 stops, kind of, to f2, the Noctilux 1.2 is still worse than the 51.4 wide open. I mean, look at the differences here. Again, this lens is about a very, very rapid focus fall off from center with vignetting, and that's part of the character. But performance-wise, again, we're talking almost 2 stops, stop down, versus wide open. There's no comparison. Again, I'm not bashing the 1.2. I think the lens is magical, but it's not a performance lens. It's not designed to give you sharpness. So the last one don't know how I can make these shareable. This is 120 SL2 DNG files.
Oof, that is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of data. You can see, I want to show bokeh, or bokeh, as some people call it. Okay, let me show you guys one other thing. And this is kind of boring, I'm sorry. But, okay, this is the bokeh test I did. I used this ridiculous think tank bag in the store. I know it's crazy, but I've actually found this to be a very effective way of, this is not a sharpness test, but here's the 0.95, and I want to compare it to the 1.2. There we go. So we've got the 1.2 on the left and the 0.95 on the right. And you can see what I want to show here is what the out of focus areas look like. The 0.95, there's nothing that's clearly visible, a very smooth transition between objects and shapes. Whereas the 1.2 has a more vintage bokeh, which is like a more broken up, I call it squiggly, out of focus rendering. And if we go to some of the bokeh balls here, you can see the harder edge of the 1.2 versus the softer edge of the original, or the 0.95. So pretty dramatic differences. Center sharpness, obviously, far superior on the 0.95. But
just look at the texture of the bag.
Yeah.
Forget
but
the
again,
text,
that rapid focus fall off of the 1.2 is a huge part of its appeal. The way that it handles highlights, the way that it renders like a vintage lens, because it effectively is a vintage lens. Now, before I leave this incredibly boring Lightroom, is there any other comparisons that people are dying to see?
Well, let's check over in the chat.
Let me come back to the wide shot here. Let me check the chats. Is that on a fixed white balance? I normalized it on Lightroom. I use auto white balance for everything because who has time for anything else? I said not that scientific, but you know, I think that was pretty satisfactory. I mean, I can obviously send if somebody wants to see something specific. I compared the 4 versions of the F1, 0.95, the 1.2 2021 version, 50 Summilux Aspheric and the 50 Apo f2 Summicron. So I did compare those 7 or so lenses. I did throw the 75 in there as well, which I know we haven't talked about
Not yet.
which we will right now. We're just doing pretty good on time.
Yeah.
Show f8. Why?
Are you really buying a Noctilux to shoot it?
No, I'm not going to show you f8. So there. I can show you f8 real quick here. Because I can search. I tagged them all with the aperture, so I can just search f8. What am I showing in f8? But
Let's see.
what am I showing? Tell me. Well, it's going to take 20 seconds is the delay?
Yeah.
Get back to me.
It's like talking to
Yeah, it's like talking to
Space
someone else.
station,
Yeah,
something
it's like a lag time. F8 is interesting because
we got to edit it out.
if we look at the
0.85
I want to show the 1.2. I have to actually look for it. Okay, here we go. So that's the 1.2 at f8. We can zoom in and you can see. Give it a second to bloopity bloop. It's great. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's
very sharp.
That's nothing really to write home about. But if we compare it to the 51.4, here we go. There's 2. All right, so we got the 1.4 on the left and the 1.2 on the right. This is as close as they're ever going to look. It would be my guess. I mean, in the center, very, very similar. Still a slight edge to the 51.4 as you get off center, although it's obviously quite almost negligible at this point.
That's impressive on the 1.2.
It's very close. This is where these lenses start to become very similar. So if you're only going to shoot at f8, though, you probably wouldn't buy a $8,000 Noctilux. But hey, who am I to judge? So yeah, that's f8 for you. Again, the 1.4 has a slight edge, but it's not dramatic. Yeah, super exciting.
Wow. So that was good. That was good. What about what about the f1 at f8?
Oh, okay,
Now
sure.
do you have it up there? Let's see what that looks like.
I'll do the f1 version 4 versus what do you want to compare it to?
The 50 Lux.
Okay.
Again.
There we go. So we got f1 version 4 on the left, 50 Lux on the right, both at f8. Let's pop the center. This is the most exciting YouTube show we've ever done.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean the best.
Very, very similar. Let's kind of go off center a little bit. I mean, you can see there's still lower contrast here on the version 4 f1. I can probably tweak it a little bit in Lightroom.
Not bad though.
Yeah,
Not bad.
It's really not. It's really not. Again,
F8 is the great equalizer.
F8 is, I was just going to tell you the same thing. F8 is the great equalizer because in the end, if you're stopped down that much, you're using such a tiny, tiny, tiny part of the glass that it's just a non-issue. So if you're in a pinch and you've got, the only thing you have with you is an F1, then sure,
it's going to be
stop
great.
down to F8 and all is good.
If you need critical sharpness.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So now I'm going to have David introduce the next lens. Bill, I was using an SL2 for everything, mostly for efficiency, because to achieve the level of critical focus I need in an efficient manner to test this many lenses, it's much easier to do on an SL2 than it is on an M10. I mean, you could use live view on an M10. It's just
Critical focus.
for critical focus on a lens like this, especially when it needs to be repeatable over many tests, the SL2 is the way to go. And because it's not a wide angle lens, it's nowhere anywhere near pushing the limits of the SL2 sensor. So, yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, do we have a slide for the 75, Jose?
Slide for the 75. Ready?
Yeah.
And do we want to show the 50 Lux on here, or want to jump to the
Let's maybe later. I don't want to get too
let's do
distracted. So,
75.
David, why don't you introduce this lens while I show it off to the people here?
This is the beautiful 75 f 1.25 Noctilux Aspheric. It was introduced just 2017, which amazingly, I actually thought it was more recent than that. My memory seems to have, time seems to be accelerating for me right now. But yeah, this lens is only about 3 years old, 3.5 years old. And it is the first Noctilux for a couple things. One, it has a removable tripod foot, which is pretty neat. Yeah, it's got a little...
Allen wrench
tools.
needed. It just like...
Yep, twist off.
So this is handy for when I'm doing testing because it allows me to mount a breakthrough like Arca plate right on here.
Very nice. And you can take it off if you don't need it.
Yeah.
It keeps the slim profile. It's also the first Noctilux that is not a 50 millimeter focal length lens. So this is the first 75 Noctilux. We've got an E67 filter size, which is very standard, same as the Apo-Summicron SL lenses. And we're back actually kind of as a throwback inspiration to the original f1.2. It's got 16 aperture blades, which is quite a lot for a modern Leica lens. And yeah, that is the 51.2. Now
They're at 75 1.25.
75 1.25. I'm sorry.
Let's pop it on. Let's pop it on the camera so you can take some pictures, eh?
Yeah. And
you're gonna no. First, you're gonna hand me the 1.2. That's what you're doing first. Before you touch this one,
I want to touch them all.
You can, but only one at a time. Okay, here's the 75. Well, you gotta be careful here because you're not putting it on the. I will carefully put the rear cap on the 1.2.
This one's also ours.
Yeah, you can mess that one.
Yeah,
up.
I can mess this one. Okay. Now, something before we even get to the photo subject. The 75 125. Okay, well, a few things really have to be said. So it is an Noctilux, but it's not an f1. It's not even an f1.2 because Leica is so precise. They could have told everyone, yeah, it's 1.2.
Right.
They're like, you can't do that. It's 1.25.
Yes.
Like, the difference is so minuscule.
Yeah.
Come on. But they're very honest. They're engineers after all. So it's a 1.25. They still consider it a Noctilux, even though it's half a stop faster than the 75 Summilux, which was previously made up until, the 1980s? 1990s?
The 75 Summilux?
When was it phased out?
The same year as the F1.
Was it really?
Oh, wait. Yeah.
All the way through?
Oh, yeah. You could get a silver box.
German made, that's right.
Yeah, if you're lucky. If you're David Noble, if you're watching this.
And what's kind of fascinating, there's a little parallel here because the 75 Summilux was inspired by, Mandler actually designed it, and he was inspired to create a portrait-length version of the 50 f1.
So if you like everything you've seen here on the 50 f1, but you want something longer, just to interrupt you, sorry.
Yep.
You should get a 75 Summilux. But I purposely didn't bring one so we wouldn't get distracted
right.
by it.
So what's fascinating here is, and you actually have one on the table, yeah, and you can hold up both of those lenses.
Which ones?
Yeah,
this
both.
one?
Yeah. So what's interesting is Peter Carba famously designed the 50 millimeter f1.4 Summilux. I know we're this is a Noctilux episode, but we got to drop a little bit of cool knowledge here. So this lens, sorry, it's backwards on here. You're backwards too.
Yep.
There. Okay, the 50 millimeter Summilux Aspheric, was a kind of ushered in a new era for. You're okay.
I'm just holding them so they can see them while you talk.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Ushered in a new era for modern Leica optics in 2004, and Peter Carba was really pushed the boundaries with the modified double Gauss here and the floating element. So the 50 Lux, and you saw it on the Lightroom. I mean, it's such a great lens.
Yeah.
The 75 f2 Apo is based on the 50 millimeter Summilux. They're essentially the same lens with one less element, the same optical design. And Peter Carba has said that he was inspired to design the 75 f2 because Mandler designed the 75 Summilux after the 50 f1. So in an interesting next bringing it all back, the 75 1.25 is, kind of the next evolution of the 50.95 in terms of taking all that technology, putting it in here. Now, they're not the same optical design like those two lenses. This is a completely new design, and I would say it's a next generation design, even past the 50.95. This lens, wide open, outperforms everything on this table. Like, everything.
Well, we have a 50 Apo on this table, so...
We don't have a 50 Apo on this table.
We do. It's right there.
What? Oh, I didn't see it hiding up there.
They're neck and neck. Those two.
They're neck and neck. But let's just say, at 1.25, this outperforms pretty much everything else on this table, which is impressive considering that it's the fastest 75 they've ever made.
Yeah, considering that the Noctilux name is normally not associated with super, super sharp.
Right. So now, let's take a look at what we're talking about here.
Let's do it. We got to change our composition, I suspect.
Oh,
maybe not.
Maybe.
Well, we'll find out.
Okay, so we're at infinity. It is worth noting as well that our out of focus areas. The bokeh balls are kind of that radial football shape again. Okay, so now it's obviously pretty crisp. I'm gonna.
It's just a big bear nose just showed up on this. If you're tuning in right now, you just see a giant teddy bear face. Like, what is that? Oh, look how mind-blowingly sharp. Are you wide open?
I am wide open.
Holy moly. That, I mean, I shoot this lens all the time, but
All
seeing
right,
it
let's
now
try that.
in context to all these other lenses is like, just makes you want to cry a little bit.
Now let's see. I'm curious. No lens shade. Let's just. I'm gonna zoom all the way out. No lens shade. Lens shade. Oh,
Yeah, you can still see a little bit. This is the least noticeable of all
the least
ones,
noticeable because it is a modern design, but it definitely improved the contrast.
Yeah, as they've made lenses newer, they become more flare resistant.
Yeah.
But clearly with the 0.95, we desperately needed that hood, so.
Okay, so let's take a shot here. Now that's at 1.25. We're gonna go to 1.4, which is half a stop. We're gonna go to f2. And the bokeh is still nice and round.
Well, that's 16 blades.
16 blades,
Very
that's
handy
right.
for that.
Okay, we're at 2.8 right now. Still round. Actually, more round than wide open, I should say. f4. Okay, we're going to 5.6. I mean, you're going to see it's not even necessary in this lens, but why not, right?
Yeah.
All's fair in love and lenses. Okay, so now let's play back. Okay, so that's going to be...
This will be easy to tell where they start because...
F8, 5.6, 4, 2.8, 2, 1.4, and 1. And that's...
Yeah, so 125. That's 125.
125, yep. So here's 125. And you can see, I mean, this is an interesting spot, right? Because forward of the point of focus and back from the point of focus is very, very natural and smooth transition. Kind of like Josh was showing previously with the vintage bokeh versus kind of the new modern bokeh. It's not squirrely. It's very, very smooth transitionally from in focus to out of focus. All right, now let's go over to our scary bear.
Man, this is wide open.
That's wide open.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that is wide open performance. Not a lot of depth of field, clearly.
That's what's amazing about this lens is that you have a combination of the Noctilux focus depth or lack thereof with Apo 50 level of sharpness where you have the focus nailed.
Yeah. And then this is okay. Yeah, and that is a good point. So then let's jump back to that real quick. So this is 1.4. That's f2.
Notice that go back and forth between 1.4 and 2. There's really no improvement in sharpness. All you're gaining is more depth of field.
Yeah.
That's it.
Exactly.
Maybe slightly more contrast.
Right, a little bit
nominal.
Nominal. And then here we've got 2.8. And now we've got f4, 5.6.
And this is what...
f8. And it's just, like Josh is saying, it's just
this is the Leica super modern lens design ethos, which is you stop down only to increase depth of field, not to improve performance.
Yeah, now and you can see this is the reason I can't scroll anymore. I'm actually that is at the very, very corner of the frame. Now that's at f8, 5.6, f4, 2.8, f2, 1.4, 1.2. So we are losing a little bit in terms of vignetting.
A little bit,
but
look how good. Okay, here's what I'm going to say. The corner of the 75 Noctilux at 1.25 wide open looks better than an F1 Noctilux in the center.
Yes.
That's what I'm going to say.
Yes.
That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, and we can also see just that evolution of, here we go. So this is 1.25, 1.4.
That's
2,
a pretty big change, yeah. Between 4 and 2.
2.8, 4, 5.6, 8.
Now I'm going to mention one thing off topic, but on topic at the same time.
Yeah.
The 75 Summicron SL, which we've talked about before, is better than this.
Yeah.
So, in terms of sharpness. So if anyone has an SL2 and just wants to sharpen 75 and looks at this and goes, wow, the 75 SL, I mean, obviously it doesn't have this look, but is better than this.
Which is insane.
Unreal. This is my favorite M lens right now. This, to me, is the best and most fun currently available M lens to use because it effectively has no compromises when it comes to performance. So you don't have to say, oh, I'm wide open, it's going to be soft. Because it's so high contrast and so sharp wide open, it's very easy to focus with a live view camera. And it's a very precisely engineered lens. So on an M10 or an M10P or an M10R or an M10 monochrome, you can use the rangefinder with it. This actual 75 Noctilux here is the one that I use to test the calibration of all the rangefinder cameras we take on trade. So the first thing I do when somebody trades me a rangefinder, digital rangefinder, is I put this lens on there. This is my benchmark because it's so perfect wide open that if the focus isn't spot on, I'll see it immediately because of how precise and how sharp it is wide open. So yeah.
I think there's also something else interesting on the focusing on this versus the 50s that we have on the table.
Okay.
The minimum focus distance and the reproduction ratio is much higher. All of the Noctiluxes focus to 1 meter minimum focus distance. It's actually been, something of a, especially if you're considering the, let's say, an F1 Noctilux or a 50 Summilux. The 50 Summilux will focus to 0.7 meters, and the Noctilux you'll be stuck at 1 meter. So actually, at 1.4 on the Summilux, if you are that much closer, you're actually going to get a more foreground subject separation and blown out background. It's not going to have the same look. It's going to be really good, but it's going to be, it kind of makes up for the difference in aperture.
Yeah.
And here we have that plus because we have a longer focal length, but instead of focusing to 1 meter, we go to 0.85 meters.
Yeah.
Okay, so the focal length is 50% longer, and we have a minimum focus that's...
And show the focus throw just so they can see. I think Mark is asking about that. It's got a pretty good throw.
It's pretty long.
It's extremely precise. So you can really dial in.
I can do it with one hand, but it's not as comfortable as...
And this, just even though I said I wasn't going to mention it, this does share a barrel design with the 90 Summilux, although they do render differently. Performance-wise, they're very similar. But the Summilux looks like a Summilux. 75 Noctilux looks like a Noctilux. So the rendering. This lens is...
really nice.
Is...
I think there's only one drawback.
Which is?
The size.
I think on an M camera, here's how I use it. I actually got this already prepped so I could show that. We could just pop that on there, just maybe if we want to show that at some point. When I'm using it on an M, this is an M10 monochrome. I use it with the tripod foot removed to make the lens as small as I can make it. I use it with the, I don't know if we can show this on the close-up here. There we go. The M10 hand grip and a thumbs up or like a thumb support as well. And that allows me to get the best balance possible. It definitely takes getting used to, and of course, really this is a two-hand lens, obviously. But thankfully, it's precise enough so that rangefinder calibration is not a problem. It's just a matter of getting used to the balance. I honestly do believe this lens is best on an SL2 or with an EVF. But the reality is, on a modern M10 or newer with the 0.73x rangefinder and the larger finder window, this is very usable. Like I said, I use this as my benchmark to test rangefinders. So I rangefinder focus with this critically every single day. And I've definitely developed a feel for it to the point where I'm just as accurate on this on an M10 as I am with live view in like your normal situation. I wouldn't do a portrait with that. I probably would rely on live view because of how critical focus on the eyes is and how little depth of field you have. But this really is a very usable combination once you get used to how it balances in your hand. Yeah, amazing.
I'm just impressed how pretty that looks on camera.
Also
that looks
true.
Great.
Man, we have covered a lot of ground. I mean, it's what time is it?
9:30 something?
Well, like, wait, man. Let me look at the chat. I'm gonna rudely look over here at the chat. I'm not making Jose.
Well, do you want me to show this off?
This could be fun. Yes. So
I snuck this on here while you weren't looking.
I would ask, but I'm just going to tell. We are now, just for fun, going to show you the current 50mm benchmark on using the same setup we've been using, which is the Leica Apo-Summicron M, 50mm f2 ASPH. Unbelievable lens. Why don't you show them how unbelievable it is?
Why don't I? Here we go. Oh, and we got to select that. There we go. Okay. Let's do some live view, right? We don't have a slide for this one.
That's okay. Just
hold on.
We're just telling you it's a 50
Yeah, no, I know, but people might be a little confused. Jose, you gonna type one up for us?
Yep.
All right, just give Jose a second. So a little background on this lens. This is also a Peter Carver design. After he designed the the 50 Summilux and the 75 Apo-Summicron, he's like, I think we can do even better than this.
Yeah.
And he worked on this lens in his personal time at home, like staring out at the garden, having coffee. He's working on this lens for 10 years. He called it his submarine lens, where it's just kind of like underneath everything else. It was always there. He said, but he didn't feel that he could get it approved because who was going to pay, $8,000 for an f2 when such a good 1.4 existed for a fraction of that price? And luckily things worked out with Leica. They really gained a lot of traction. They, introduced some kind of amazing technology that people were excited about. And he's like, okay, well, here it is. So he presented it. He presented it to the powers that be, and they said, yeah, let's see what happens. And obviously it's been a tremendous hit because the 50 Apo-Summicron, how many years did this take till it was widely available?
So I think it was 2 years, and even now it's hard to get again. So I hope it's hard to get because they're making new 35 Apo-Summicrons instead. But I don't actually know because that's the next episode. We're not talking about that right now. So why don't we do live view thingamajig?
Yeah. Here we go.
Why did our composition? No, I guess it hasn't changed. Was just spoiled by that 75 view.
We were. Now, of course, let's see. Does a shade make a difference? Interestingly here, not really.
Tiny bit,
but
barely,
oh my gosh.
Barely.
Yeah, so let me zoom in. And I think I just monkeyed with the exposure.
Are you messing stuff up?
Just doing things. Okay.
Making stuff. All right.
So I am curious, just again, to see, wow, that just snaps right into focus.
Yeah, this lens is comically easy to use compared to a Noctilux.
No shade? Shade.
It's the same.
Yeah. The background is changing ever so slightly.
Okay, so 2% difference.
Okay, so this is wide open. Obviously, it's so easy to focus because you could just tell exactly when it's sharp right there.
Yeah, I don't want to show this lens like we're bashing Noctiluxes. Not at all. This is just to give you an idea of the other end of the spectrum. This is not a lens that has any real magical bokeh whatsoever. Zoom in on the flowers on the right side.
Well, let me take a shot.
Oh yeah, okay.
Let's take a shot.
Yeah, this is not a bokeh lens. This is just a lens that has uncompromising performance. Different animal. Barely vignettes wide open, this thing. It's really something else. There we go. You can see the flowers nothing special. They look great, but
very sharp.
Again, different lens, different purpose.
Very round.
Yeah.
No, a little bit of footballing wide open here. But otherwise, very well controlled in terms of all those. And of course, just everything is...
Yeah, let's see the mug. Yeah.
So that's off axis.
That's corner, wide open.
And not even where it's focused. So if I focus down here...
Yeah, right. We're showing it's both out of focus and in the corner. So it's like... There we go. There you go. Pretty good.
Ironically, what are we missing? What name is missing on this mug?
Well, Noctilux. Well, it's all the S's. It's all the S's.
It's all the S's.
Yeah.
So it's very sharp, even off axis, wide open.
Yeah.
And if we stop down to 2.8,
Again, different lens, different purpose, but yeah.
And I'll show the metal here.
Oh yeah, and no CA, or barely any. Like it's tiny bit.
No, not really.
Not when you get the.
No, it's apochromatically corrected. So this is an incredible lens. Let me focus back on our little bear here. Okay, and if I stop this down to f4.
And again, no change of sharpness, just adding depth of field.
Yeah.
That's it.
This lens is already as sharp as going to be wide open. And it's just obviously...
I like the setup a lot. We're going to have to keep some variant of this for episodes where we talk about lenses.
Yeah.
I wish we had this when we did our episode about the different M lenses.
Right.
Well, the reality is we talked about so many lenses.
Yeah.
It would have been a 4-hour-long episode if we had this technology available to us then. So maybe a blessing in disguise. We'd still be doing that episode if we had to show every single one. So
what do you guys think of the setup we've got going here?
We definitely value the feedback in each week so we can have, obviously we're limited by the physical amount of space we have to actually do a studio setup shot, but we're having a good time showing in real time, and I did all the Lightroom testing.
Did we actually get through all the lenses?
Yeah.
Wow.
We talked about the 1.2, the 1.0, 4 versions.
Mm-hmm.
Any burning questions that we didn't cover about the Noctilux? We've got another 10 minutes if we need to. Otherwise, We had more than 10. If
Yeah.
we need. Yeah, we have time.
Let's hit
for
some
once.
questions.
For once, we were efficient enough
Wow.
to actually cover
Oh my
in
God.
less than 2 hours everything we feel like.
Something must be wrong with us.
Yeah. Well, people seem to like it. I mean, in terms of, I will mention one thing I didn't talk about is maybe some buying advice. In general, as I mentioned at the top of the show or near the top, a recent CLA is ideal. If not, factor in the cost of a CLA service when you're buying an F1. Ideal 6-bit coded. You know, a 6-bit CLA can range anywhere from $400 to $1,000 depending on how much work needs to be done. It's really case by case. Check the lens for fungus and haze. You know, the normal stuff. You're going to pay a lot more money for a lens with the hood, and you're going to pay a lot more money.
And you've already seen, you should definitely be using the shade.
Yes. You're going to pay even more for a lens with box of papers. If you buy an F1 without the lens hood, it's really not that big a deal from a performance standpoint because you can always get an aftermarket 60mm threaded hood or 58 if you have a version 1. So you're not out of luck. You're just out of luck in the sense of value because those hoods are very, very rare. You know, I buy these lenses in varying states, you know, totally naked with nothing, just caps, or with everything, you know, box papers, the whole 9 yards. It just depends. I love these lenses enough where I don't really care. I just want it to work. I don't want scratches on the glass because those you can't really fix. You know, serious haze or fungus is something to avoid. You know, obvious signs of being dropped, things like that.
Dents are not usually desirable.
Yeah, Stefan, I don't think the blue cast you're going to see in our setup here, but I will be in touch with you this week because I got to send you your lens back. So I'll send you some of the sample images that I have, which has blue in it. 90 Summilux versus 75 Noctilux.
Similar.
The Summilux looks like a Summilux. The Noctilux looks like a Noctilux.
But in terms of in terms of lens barrel, they're almost identical in size.
Yeah, they feel the same. The Summilux bokeh is higher contrast, more shapes more clearly defined. Transition between hard and soft edges is shorter. Noctilux bokeh is defined by very ill-defined shapes, very smooth transitions. It depends on the look you want. Also, 90 has more compression, which can be better for portraiture. So,
although 75 is a great classic portrait length too.
yeah, they're lenses that are so similar enough that you probably don't necessarily need to have both. But
I would suggest don't pick one for its characteristic. I would just say I like shooting a 75 or I like shooting a 90.
I prefer the 75 Noctilux and I like the Noctilux look, but I did take a trip last year with the 90 Summilux on the SL2 and I really enjoyed it for the compression that it has because it really does make a difference, those 25mm, in flattening things out and bringing things in.
How about this?
Yes.
Now, this is completely off topic, but I would do, let's say you like 90
Yeah.
and you like the functionality and the compression of 90,
Yeah.
but you like the look of the 75 Noctilux.
Yeah.
You should get a 75 Noctilux and a 90 Macro Elmar.
True.
Which tied in with last episode.
We love the 90 Macro Elmar.
And it's so compact. So you
Preaspheric 50 Summilux versus new Noctilux 1.2. I don't have a Preaspheric 50 Summilux floating around, so I can't tell you. I've shot them both. The Preaspheric is not as sharp and has even less focus, like a faster focus fall off from center to corners. About the same vignetting. But if I ever get my hands on a Preaspheric, I'm happy to test that for you. The reality is, you're talking about a lens you would buy pre-owned for $2,000-ish, depending on version, or a lens you have to wait a year or two for $8,000. So to me,
it's very different.
The comparison of insert lens here versus 1.2 Noctilux isn't what that lens is about. Isn't what the 1.2 Noctilux is about, at least not right now. It's more about having a special piece that stands apart from the other 50s. It's not, oh, should I get a 1.2 Noctilux or Preaspheric 50 Lux or anything like that. They really are so different that I don't, in my mind, see the comparison. Maybe in 5-10 years when things are more available. But even then, I'm not currently comparing a 50.95 Noctilux to a 50 Summicron version 3. You know, I'm just, at a certain point, you have to sort of say, what am I looking for from a size perspective, budget perspective? Do I want to buy a lens that you can't even get new anymore? Do I want to buy a lens you can buy new? I mean, there's a lot of variables there.
And there's no one right answer.
How does the 1.2 Noctilux compare to the 1.0? Oh, I didn't actually show that.
We should, yeah.
Let me go back to the old screen and Maru here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim. Good question. Okay. Jose, can we switch to the compy? Okay. So this is F1 version 4 against, let's see, make sure I got my specs right here. All right, got it. So I've got the 50 Noctilux F1 version 4 on the left, 50 Noctilux 1.2 aspheric current version on the right, both wide open. Let's take a look. Here we can see, I would give the slight edge in sharpness to the 1.2, I think, although I suspect, yep, you can see here that while the 1.2 is a little sharper in the center, the focus falls off much faster than the F1. If we look at my labels here, you can see the F1 labeling is a little bit sharper and higher contrast than the F1.2. Let me pop back out. Heavier vignetting on the F1 than the F1.2. Look at the top right corner. Yeah, again, so your sharpness is greater here on the F1 wide open than on the F1.2. So it takes longer for the focus to go from sharp to soft as you go to the corners. Let's take a look at the bokeh shot real quick because I actually like this discussion. This is harder to find. Hold on. Oops, not what I wanted. I'm using I'm reaching over tons of lenses.
Yeah, let's move those lenses away.
All right, so there's your, okay, here we go.
Better?
And of course, my labels are actually out of focus, but I
Nice.
remember enough. So, all right, this is a good one. So this is version 4, F1 on the right, 1.2 Noctilux aspheric on the left, both shot wide open. Let's take a look at our bokeh here. All right, let's let it load. So you can see that the 1.2 on the left has a smoother transition between shapes and lines, whereas the F1 on the right, especially being a mandler lens, which are known for this kind of squiggly bokeh. So to me, despite the fact that the 1.2 is an older design, the F1 looks more vintage to me. Let me go to the center. Sharpness is very close. I could have just missed focus here a little bit. This is not a sharpness test on this bag. Again, I am seeing sharpness fall off faster on the 1.2. So you can see the bag here, you start to lose detail much faster on the 1.2 than on the F1. I mean, there's some dog fur in the bag you can see here. You can't even see it on the 1.2. So
Dog fur is on everything.
yeah, well, what are you going to do? So here again, this is like a Leica sign that's illuminated. On the 1.2, it's very ill-defined. There's a very smooth transition. On the F1, it's more defined. There's more detail in the transition. And the last spot that I'll look is going to be here. This is like a counter light. Here, you can see, again, a very soft transition to these harsh edges, whereas on the F1, it's a harder transition. It's more clearly defined. So if you wanted a lens with a bit more of a modern bokeh, and you can see the bokeh balls here on the F1.2 are softer because, again, that focus is falling off much, much faster. So for subject isolation from focus, the 1.2 has the edge. Vignetting causing subject isolation, the F1 has the edge because it does vignette more. And you can even see it here in the bottom right. So not a night and day difference, which I wouldn't expect because we're talking about two vintage lenses, but you can see the think tank branding here, how much faster that falls off on the 1.2 and how much less
Look at the edge of the strap over there too.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, and of course, you can buy a 1.2 brand new, and you can't buy an F1 brand new anymore, so that's another variable. And all F1.2s are 6-bit coded. So again, I think I'm not, in my mind, going to compare the F1 to the F1.2 from a purchasing and acquisition sense because of how different the scenario is involving getting those two lenses. If you were a real enthusiast for the Noctilux experience, you probably would end up buying one of each. The values of the F1s are extremely stable. They're basically a commodity at this point. You can buy and sell them for the same price. You just want to buy the best example you can. So hopefully that answers the question. I know we're really getting into the depths and the nitty-gritty here.
Sure.
You can come back to us, Jose.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's great to have those comparisons and be able to see them. So if there's anything else.
A lot of questions.
Did we miss something?
No. Always use UV filters. In this case, probably, yes. Given that the fact that you can't really...
Oh, the front elements.
Yeah,
and the coatings.
on the older lenses, yeah. I would use a Leica or a Breakthrough UV filter.
I mean, thankfully, I would say that the reissued 51.2 has modern hard lens coatings. So they're much more durable. If you have an original 51.2, I would really put something over it to protect it because those coatings were much softer and would show cleaning marks and things like that. Version 4 f1, I mean, has pretty durable coatings.
Yeah, everything is with lens profiles, by the way, because I'm always, if the lens isn't 6-bit coated, I'm manually telling the camera. So that's all with the correction. But of course, vignetting you could fix.
Yeah.
Let me just see other questions here. The thing that scares me is that the Noctis are more suited for the SL than the M. No, I think it's easier to more quickly get more focused pictures.
How many test shots do you have again?
It's 120 images, right?
There you go.
But the reality is, if your rangefinder is calibrated and your lens is calibrated, it just depends on your eyesight. But of course, that's the same thing if you're using it on an SL because it's still manual focus. So you can't go wrong with either. It's just what you're comfortable with.
I would say there, like, I mean, you could use a viewfinder magnifier, like a 1.4.
Yeah, if you have an M10, you have to adapt it. But yeah, you can use a 1.4x viewfinder magnifier to make the rangefinder patch larger.
Yep.
Diopters as well.
And it'll also make, on a standard viewfinder, 50 millimeter fill the frame.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Very true, which is nice, yeah.
I mean, if you're a real Noctilux enthusiast, either 50 or 75, I think a viewfinder magnifier, a hand grip, and a thumb support of some measure, would make your experience shooting much better. Your hit rate should be higher, your stability should be better, because it is a very heavy lens to mount on the front of an M camera. If you are going to use it on an SL, you've already got the built-in grip, and you already have the magnifier because you can easily see what you're doing in live view as well as magnified view. So, but you don't have to shoot it on an SL. You can easily shoot it on an M as long as you're, adding in the things that are going to make it really helpful to hold steadier.
A few people are asking about the 35 Apo. We are obviously going to do a whole show about it. Just give us a minute. It just came out last week. We don't even have one yet. We don't know when our show's going to be, but we will do a whole episode on the 35 Apo. And obviously, we're going to compare it to every other 35 that's relevant. So when everyone asks us how it compares to the FLE and the SL, we will have these answers for you.
We will know.
But not now.
I have a relatively in-depth article on 35 Apo-M that you can check on a Red Dot forum with lots of sample images and insights into design and all that.
Yeah, I think how much weather resistance do Noctiluxes have? None.
No.
They're not weather sealed. Do not go in the rain with a perfect F1 Noctilux, please. Or do it and then whatever. It's your own risk. It's your own stuff.
What
I think we've pretty much got all the burning questions.
Jose, do you see any other questions that came in while we were chattering away?
A lot of comparison questions, but you guys went through.
We covered a lot of that?
those. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
Hi, Jack. Jack says, when we get a 35 Apo, please do the 35mm episode all over again with a live test. If you only knew how long it took me to gather up all those 35s, because we had one of everything.
Can I tell you also, just as a logistics thing, it's really hard to test anything longer or shorter, I'd say, than 50 millimeter, because the background has to be exponentially larger and there's just like space.
This is a good question. The short version is where to get a Noctilux steel aid. I would only go to Leica. In fact, most of the time I send it directly to Wetzlar. That's kind of intense, but they've become so valuable now that
do it right.
Ironically, the .95s I'll send to the US. It's fine.
Well, yeah, it's modern lens.
I mean, customer care in the US is fantastic. Yep. They really do a great job. But for the F1s, there's something to me about sending them to Germany, even though that's not even where they were made. It's just kind of funny.
Well, you can't get
you can send them to like US, and yeah, that's true. And they'll do a good job. But I mean, DAG and YYE are great. And I don't think they would damage the lens. I just think that for a lens like that level, I like to go to the OG, to the people that made it, Okay, any other last questions? Jose, if you see anything I missed, please interrupt me. I mean, there's a lot of interest, I think, in the F1. I think it's when you have this much myth, it's nice to kind of break through that and just show you for real what happens.
Yeah.
And as you can probably tell, because I've been talking a lot, I'm extremely passionate about the Noctilux. And spending the afternoon shooting all of these versions is like, I'm just jonesing to take out an SL2 or an SL2S with...
I want to steal this from you just for a second.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay.
It's your computer.
I want to find... Remember, we showed this in a previous episode.
Oh, I like this the white light computer light. It's like,
Oh,
hey,
it's like a
nice
nice
fill light. Yeah.
And I can move it around too. Does that help? Oh, look at that! Yeah,
it's
that's cool.
freaking
Okay.
out. This is, you know, we're getting to the end of the show.
We are.
Let me see if there's
So
any-
I'm just gonna bring up a photo here, and I believe that we showed this previously.
Yeah, well, David's poking around. Oh, he's gonna show something.
Yeah, you can keep answering questions. Don't worry about
Well,
me.
I can't see the questions because
Whoopsie.
you can't.
There we go.
Scroll. You gotta scroll to the bottom there, bro. Thanks. Want to use a model? If you can find someone who's willing to sit in our sweaty, tiny, cramped studio for 2.5 hours, it's perfectly still. Please send them our way. I would not subject anyone to the two of us in real life for
Probably
that
not.
long in
Probably
this
not.
tiny little box that we're in. But yeah, I wish.
I'm looking.
Will any Noctilux fit the
There
S3?
we
No, the S3 is medium format, so you can go S lenses to a smaller sensor, but not the other way around. That would be cool though. The 100 Summicron S is the closest you can get to a Noctilux for the S. So check out David's S lens guide on Red.Forum if you want to see that.
Oh, the 100.
Yeah. All right, Jose, let's go to the old Compy-Do.
Let me.
You doing?
Where's
I don't know how
Full-
this works.
I full screen?
Buttons.
This one? Oh, this one. There we go. Okay.
I know just where that was.
Although there's a little bit of white edge there, but so this is a 50.95 on the M240. And definitely in
It's weird
real.
'cause you're talking with the.
I know you can talk though.
Well, no, go ahead.
But I want you to describe what we're seeing here in terms of the light rendering.
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
the reality is the first thing you're seeing is a mundane moment made extraordinary by the tool, right? This shot taken with the 50 Apo would not be a shot. But because David is strategically using the Noctilux, here's what I'll say. Using a Noctilux, you're thinking almost as much about what's out of focus as what's in focus. Normally, when you are photographing, you tend to get pretty bullseye, not necessarily what I mean like center, but you're thinking about your subject, and then the background becomes what it is. But a Noctilux, as this shot by David exemplifies, gets you thinking about all the layers of the image and how the focus falls off and what the out of focus areas are going to look like, which is kind of a unique way, and it changes the way you think while you're shooting. You can see, number one, how little is in focus and how the focus sort of falls off both like this, going center to out of the edge of the frame, and also in the depth of the frame. And look at the way, as the windshield changes depth, you can't see my hands. The windshield changes depth, and it goes, and the raindrops go from in focus to out of focus, while they're simultaneously catching the various colors of the street lights. This is David using a lens to create an image, again, that would not have been anything particularly interesting with a different lens. And he's using the background to his advantage. Notice that the entire sort of background, even the upper left corner and behind the car, has things going on that are taking advantage of what the Noctilux can do. You have specular highlights, you have light sources, you have the street that's
The wet
reflective.
reflection, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You have the shiny metal of the car. It's all coming together beautifully. And the subject itself is just ever so slightly off center. So you really get a sense of depth because your eye first goes to the sharpest point and then quickly goes back into the image, trying to figure out what's going on back there and all this focusing things that are going on. So it's really a fascinating scene to dissect, and a shot that wouldn't have existed without that lens, which I think is awesome.
And now if we can figure out how to
What are you trying to do?
make it not full screen, maybe try escape.
Escape?
Yeah, escape
Hey,
works.
we got it.
We got out of it.
All right, we did it. What's the
All
other
right.
one?
There are some more Noctilux shots, but they're not like, dramatic like that.
Well, it's getting late, so I don't know. If we
Yeah,
have...
I would say I think there was a. Hold on. See if there's any other questions while I find the other shot.
There's a bunch. Oh my
There's a
goodness.
bunch.
All right, let me do speed round real quick.
Or here, this is Noctilux.
Double Aspherical 35 cannot be 6-bit coded. I stand corrected. I asked Germany. Sorry, I was wrong. Although I'm still not convinced. But
And here also, this is a more shot.
they can't see it.
Oh.
There we go.
This is a shot where we're looking. Let me zoom in. This is a shot where we're looking at a. Okay, apologize again for the white edge on the left side there. We're looking through a window, so there's layers of reflection, and it's a very cinematic look to the Noctilux, which is something that I appreciate for it. You know, because it kind of, I don't know. Again, this is mundane. There's two guys sitting at a deli counter, but it kind of transforms the moment because of what's in the reflection and how soft that is, and what's in the background and how soft that is.
You're using the lens to create subject isolation, even though it's a busy shot.
Yeah.
Normally, you'd have to have someone on a solid colored background, or they have to stand out. But the lens's characteristics and draw allows you to use your scene differently. Let me just check last minute questions, and then we need to be done because we could go on all night. Escape.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, we were. Let's see.
Suggestions on how to compose rangefinder in Noctilux?
We'll refer to those images David just showed. I think with the rangefinder, you've got your 50 millimeter frame lines, so it's no different than any other 50. You just have to work a little slower because you've got to be really precise with your focus, but it's the same as any other 50.
I would say you could do. Look, you know, it is going to be very shallow depth of field. So when when I'm on a tripod, obviously shooting a still subject, it's easy for me to tweak, and you can see that.
Yeah.
If you're standing still, just breathing, you're going to be going in and out of focus if you're shooting wide open. Let's say you're shooting wide open at minimum distance for a portrait, and you're going to be breathing and you're going to be moving slightly. I'd say what I tell everyone for steady handheld M shots: take an athletic stance. Don't stand with your feet together. Stand with your feet, you know, kind of hip width apart, knees slightly bent, and leaning a little bit forward at the waist, you know, because then you're kind of more locked in and active. The other thing is find your minimum distance and find where your subject falls into focus, back off a little bit, go in a little bit, and then snap.
Yeah.
Instead of hunting focus, set the lens, focus, and shoot. And the same as for macro too, you know, where you want to find a certain distance and move the camera to achieve focus, not try to focus the lens at that critical point.
If we could only have 150 Noctilux, I would take the .95 because it's the best of everything. It's beautiful, wide open. It's very high performing stop down. It's very usable mechanically. But I also love the F1 version 4 because I love the way that lens feels. It's like retro modern. I'd have a hard time choosing between the two. I think there was one more question that I want David to answer, which is, I mean, the short version of this, and you can use these for reference.
Sure.
Filters, beyond UV filters for the Noctilux?
Yep.
Any very quick suggestions before we sign off?
Absolutely. Yes. If you're using a Noctilux on an M camera and you want to take advantage of its specific look, as we can see by F8, it looks like a 50 Summicron. So you want to use an ND filter, fixed ND.
One's a polarizer.
A polarizer. Sorry, I thought you handed me an ND.
No, it's one of each.
A fixed ND. And this one is a 4-stop.
Yeah, this is the Leica filter.
Yeah, this is a 4-stop. I tend to recommend, say, a 3 or a 4-stop for Noctiluxes if you're going to be using on an M camera. The reason for that is the camera tops out with a mechanical shutter of 1/4000th of a second. And if you're going to shoot at 0.95, you need to block down some of the light in order to hit that shutter speed, even at base ISO. So a 4-stop ND will be, I think, the best thing, say, for an M10, where you can easily shoot up into, 800, 1600 if you need to, without having to take the filter off.
Yeah.
I mean, you can shoot it up to 10,000. Let's be real.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be too much of a hindrance. If you're using it on an M9, you got to be a little more careful because you don't have as much range when you're going up in terms of ISO. A polarizer, certainly.
What's the other one?
I'm not looking at a polarizer. Certainly is helpful. It will knock down 1 to 2 stops of light depending on the polarizer. So it'll act a little bit as a natural ND, and also it can remove some reflections, which you may want, like I showed in the photo. Reflections kind of are really cool with the Noctilux. Yeah. So those are some basic ones. Also, if you're shooting on the monochrome, either an M10 monochrome, an M246, the color filters are going to be very helpful, yellow, orange, red, green. And I would say also, talking about ND, you don't always need ND. if you're not using it on an M camera, if you're going to use it on an SL2, because you have an electronic shutter in the camera that goes to
40,000.
40,000th of a second, you can shoot it wide open with no filter. So that's an advantage on the SL.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think that sums it up. You want to sign us off?
I mean, not really, but sure, why not? I'm having so much fun.
I know.
Me and Ernst over there.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I can like touch the bear.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this look that back and forward that we did at the Noctilux. Please let us know in the comments what you think. If you learned something new, if you just learned the same thing over again that you forgot that you once knew. I kind of feel that way. Tell us what you think about the live shooting, if you'd like to see more of that, and what we might examine doing a live kind of shot. I'm also curious how you like the live shooting versus, some preset test shots that we did in Lightroom and doing comparisons there, because it's certainly a lot easier to see two shots side by side.
Mm-hmm.
Here, it's kind of easier to see the image performance in camera. So, we want to strike a balance, and really curious what your thoughts are on that, since we're trying out new things, right?
Yeah.
We're all learning something.
That's very true. We're having a good time, though. It's okay.
It's a great time. So, with that, I think our next episode is going to be on the...
Well,
maybe?
We're going to do a show on the 35 Apo, and then we'll have our 30th episode, Ask Us Anything. We just don't know how...
The order of things?
There's still some unknowns. So
stay tuned.
Subscribe, and you'll get notified when our next live stream is scheduled, for sure.
Yeah. Be sure, subscribe and click the notification bell so you know when we post new content. As always, we would really appreciate hitting that thumbs up button. Even more so, giving us a subscribe, because we want to bring you tons more content like this. Big shout out to our team, Jose, who keeps us running and gets all the different angles going.
Constantly.
A lot of work.
Yeah.
So thanks, Jose. One day we are going to get a Jose cam, we promise you.
One day.
Much to his dismay, you will get to see the man behind all the things that happen.
Behind the curtain, right?
That's right.
Thanks to Kirsten, who is monitoring the chat.
And real quick, thank you to
everybody.
Blair, Christine, Michelle, Al, and Stefan for loaning us your precious prized lenses for the show.
I have video evidence.
That's right. I'm not dropping anything.
Nothing has
could
been
not have done it
dropped.
without you guys, and we appreciate that.
Yes, thank you so much. We got a great community that sends us all this, because unfortunately, we don't get to keep all of these things for ourselves as much as we might want to.
Unfortunately not.
But, we'll take what we can get, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So always big thanks to Josh for knowing all the things about everything and just putting in the hours and hours for testing.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks to you guys for tuning in to us in spite of what we are. Like a nerd.
So true. So true.
And we will be back with another exciting episode of probably the 35 Apo-M, most likely, and we'll let you know.
Stay tuned.
Thanks a lot, and everyone have a good night and rest of the weekend.
Thanks, everyone.